and stingrays and octopuses and schools of bream and trevally and sea eagles and black cockatoos, and it's like Garden of Eden type stuff. So it's just thriving with life, which is such a beautiful thing to bear witness to.
Bro, and you
have such a descriptive way of talking about like landscapes and environments.
Yeah, well, it's something that I guess I really value myself. It's something that I take a lot of spiritual nourishment from. I guess being a part of a landscape and seeing that incredible web of life that exists out there, and that is really external to the human and built environment that has just been that way for hundreds and thousands of years. And it's really one of the reasons why I'm down on the South Coast is because it's so accessible. I can kind of walk out my front door and walk for 5 minutes and be on a rock shelf under the full moon with the kind of ocean breaking over the waves and go, well, how many people have stood here on this spot, before and not see any signs of the human environment and kind of really feel that connection to existence and nature and the world. I'm starting strong out of the gates. We're going deep. Going deep.
And we're on. I hit record a few moments ago. Guys, this is episode 68 of the Jungle Brothers podcast. We're going to rip straight in. We've got Paul West with us today.
Hello.
Thanks for coming, man.
Pleasure.
Good to have you here. T, myself in the house.
Hello.
Paul Fodafili's not with us. It's his rostered day off. We officially don't have RDOs, but Paul brought the terminology.
CGNs have RDOs.
Yeah.
So you've got the substitute, Paul.
Yeah, that's right.
Morning day
Paul.
off.
Yeah. Man, I guess, well, first I want to say thanks to Panavor for giving us the coffee that we're drinking today. They're always hooking us up. But Paul, how'd you get here? Because it's been, for you and me, like you came here last night.
Yep.
You brought me a bag of oysters and a tub of cream. And then you jumped in and you did strength and movement class downstairs. You jumped in, did jiu-jitsu upstairs.
Yep.
And then we had a mad brekkie this morning. And we'd never met before.
It's been great. And thank you, Joe, for making me feel so welcome. I've just met you this morning, but it's great to be in the JB house. And yeah, it's I guess to say how I got here, it was 2 trains, 2 buses from the far south coast coming up with my kids on the school holidays. But how I actually connected with the Jungle Brothers, I think I just came across you guys on my Instagram Explore feed. It was either that or maybe like I follow the MoveNat hashtag, but I feel like maybe that's not you guys. Like I don't know if you've hashtagged that before.
We don't use it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I had to think about it. Like it must have been the Explorer, and you kind of see a little video of something happening. I was like, oh, what are these boys up to? That looks like some interesting methodology for kind of physical training that they're doing, and followed it. Saw that you're in Sydney. Had a good look through the page and saw what you were about and thought, wow, these guys, this really aligned with the way that I like to approach my movement practice and my philosophy around physicality. And really the way it was distilled down into the kind of the 3 words of fight, lift, move. That's because 2 years ago I did a level 1 certification in MoveNat, which, if your listeners out there don't know what it is, it's started by a French guy, Erwan Lecour. It's kind of in that Ido Patal, movement philosophy, but Erwan's kind of like the outdoor man. Like
Practical applicator.
Exactly, yeah. The quantification of fundamental human movements and the progressions and regressions within that, with a big focus on doing it in the natural environment, but also being able to do it in the gym environment as a training tool, with hopefully, improving your outdoor movement as well. And so one of the first things that I learned in that was that they break down the kind of human sphere of movement into combative, locomotive, and manipulative.
Do they?
Yeah, which is a really boring way of saying fight, lift, move. I think it's or like a quite complicated combative. Yes,
start now.
Manipulation. Onto the locomotive now, boys. And it really resonated with me that modality, because it made a lot of sense to me. I was telling you, Joe, when we were heading out to breakfast, that my visit into the gym last night is probably like the 5th time I've ever gone through the doors of a gym in my life.
That's bananas.
Nice. Yeah, it's and a lot of that's had to do with the fact that I've spent a lot of my adult life living regionally. That's excluding like jiu-jitsu gyms, but like an actual dedicated, physical training space. And so much of that has been because the practice doesn't really resonate with me, like the idea of kind of sitting in a controlled range of motion machine and pulling a pin out and putting it on number 10 plate or whatever, and just sitting there and pushing and listening to your headphones. And I don't know that I
In the
felt-
mirror.
in the mirror, yeah, exactly. Like
mirror.
yeah,
Doing it
look at baby,
next to other people that you don't talk to.
yeah. There's no connection.
You actively avoid them.
Yeah, you're not connecting with the people around you. It felt like you're not even really connecting with yourself. You know, you're kind of just, you're off into the world of your headphones, and you're just doing this movement on autopilot. Like there wasn't a consciousness to it. So I guess I really avoided that. And I started to go down that training path because when I was shooting River Cottage, which was a program that I made for Foxtel a few years back, I had to get like in season 4, I had to get a medical assessment because I was the host, so they had to insure me. If something wrong, like there was a lot of money at stake if I got sick, and so I had to go to my local GP, and they you smoke, blah blah blah. Do you do this? Do you do that? Step on the scales and measure your height. And I kind of sat down and I was waiting for their feedback, and they're like, okay, so, you're going okay, but like your BMI, like you're technically obese. And I'm like, what? Nah, no way. No, come on. I'm like, I grew up in the Hunter Valley. It's like rugby league territory. Like Sonny Bill Williams would be obese on the BMI. And then kind of went home and had like a hard look in the mirror and like, oh wait, yeah, no, I don't look like Sonny Bill Williams. I probably am like getting a little, a bit fat. And it's because I'd been going from a career working as a chef where you're kind of doing 16 hours a day on your feet constantly, not eating a great deal. So your energy expenditure to your energy input was really high. But then going to working in a TV production, even though I was working on the farm, like it's still at its core was a TV production.
That catering.
That's what it was. Catering. Man, bam, like
You
3
can't
times a
have
day
dessert.
with tea breaks.
Yeah, you can't have dessert at the catering.
Yeah,
table. You got to skip dessert.
Yeah,
always.
so you learnt that the hard
and like
way.
one protein is good.
Yeah.
You don't need the fish and the red meat and
and
the
the
white
pork.
meat.
But that's
chicken
that's
dishes.
such an exercise in restraint, to have this like abundant spread on the table, especially coming from a career for the bulk of my adult life where it was like if you could grab a small handful of food and put it in your mouth and chew it in the middle of service, that was about as good as catering got for you. It's the hospo or the chefing trade. You spend a lot of time cooking for other people, but not a lot of time eating. So, and I was living regionally, and I thought, well, I can't really go and sign up for someone to guide me through this. And I didn't really want to do that was maybe 5-6 years ago, and online training was probably very much in its infancy then, like nowhere near the maturity that we've got now, especially post or during COVID. And so I thought, I've got to do this myself, and started going, okay, I don't want to do like that traditional gym path. Like I just don't want to go and like punch plates or push, machines or get on the treadmill. I live in this beautiful natural environment. Like I want to learn to move well and efficiently through that. And so it took me to the work of Irwan and MoveNat and as well the US biomechanist Katie Bowman, which I saw you've got one of her books over there.
Katie,
Move
which
DNA.
is, exactly, Move Your DNA. That was the one that kind of triggered me down that path. And reading Move Your DNA, I was like, this is just, it's so logical. It's like the human being is designed to adapt to input, and the higher variety and evolutionary, we're exactly, from a physiological sense, we're the same as what we were 10,000 years ago. We haven't changed, but the nature of the inputs have changed significantly, and we're kind of these like zoo humans now, like where we're, we don't move our bodies in the way they were designed. And so I thought,
Prisoners.
yeah, exactly. Like we're sitting in our car, we're sitting
Domestic
in the couch at
farm
home.
animals.
Yeah, exactly. But true though.
Fed
Yeah.
and happy,
Yeah. But are we?
but oblivious.
Yeah, but I mean, like,
That's right.
so much preventable health, disease comes from these kind of modern inputs, our lack of movement and our lowering in nutrient density of the food that we eat. So I took that approach. I thought, you know what? I don't want to be obese. Like I got my first kid on the way. I don't want to be like not just dad bod, but fat dad. And I kind of topped out at about 115 kilos. I went, blow this.
That's quite a lot of weight.
That's a lot of
for a
weight.
guy your
Could've been
size.
big dude.
Yeah. And like I felt like I was kind of carrying it pretty good,
How old were you at that
I
time?
was 30. Yeah. But like I was still like running and working and like doing a little bit of, kind of training just with myself, body weight, a little bit of barbell stuff. So I didn't feel
Still
like
strong.
Still strong. Like I
Yeah.
didn't feel like I was like lacking.
And if you're shifting that weight around all day anyway,
Yeah.
it's actually
you're getting strong just carrying your ass
you get
around.
strong carrying.
Yeah. But but it felt like, I'd probably let it go a bit. And so I thought, well, I need to take proactive action with this. Like, I need to have that discipline myself, because I'm not going to be having anyone to train me or hold my hand through it. And that led me down the MoveNat, Katie Bowman kind of path. And, after 5 years, I'm back down to a much more comfortable weight of kind of 90 kilos now. And so, 25 kilos, I could have been on The Biggest Loser. I should be selling
Actually carry 90 kilos well.
Yeah.
Like, you're lean for 90.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. I'm blushing to you.
Yeah, I would have thought you would have been lighter.
Yeah. Well, I'm dense.
Deceptively
How
tall.
was he on the
Full
mats,
cream.
Joe?
Hey?
How was he on the mats?
I didn't get to roll with him, but you looked good, man.
lucky.
You're
Lucky
moving well.
Just for reference, I am like an unstriped journeyman white belt.
Just
So
go
it's
for
Joe
that
would
knee.
have
Go for
cleaned
Joe's
me up.
knee.
I like the way you said that. Like, you're like, I'm a journeyman white belt.
Yeah.
I've never heard anyone in jits refer to themselves as a journeyman, but
Yeah.
it's a great label.
Yeah.
Ronan.
Well, that's what happens when you move,
Oh.
and you live regionally and you can't commit, you can't be in one place, one gym under one black belt. You just, I drop in and out of different jits gyms.
The Wandering Samurai.
Yeah.
I was
Always
a
a white belt.
journeyman brown belt for a long time.
Yeah.
I've been a brown belt for as long as I've done, like for the same amount of time it took me to get to brown belt. I've
Yes.
been a brown belt, and I didn't, and I kind of, I had for a long period of time there, I didn't train. I just had the brown belt and I kind of stopped. The gym was the focus. And then I was like, maybe I'll just leave it at that. I'm just kind of not that engaged
happy.
by it.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm still a savage. Brown belt's still respectable.
Yeah.
But then I ended up getting back into it and connecting with the coach, and now I'm most definitely not a journeyman now.
Yeah.
But it's cool how it changes.
Yeah, and
When
I think for me, like that, the jiu-jitsu was the last piece of that puzzle as well. It's finding something that had like a physical outlet that your training could work towards. Like not being fit just for the sake of being fit. Like you're lifting all this weight, you're developing all this movement, but what's the end game for it? It's
Where do you get to play?
Yeah, exactly. Like
Without
where do
getting
you get to test
brain
that?
trauma.
Yeah. So and I loved the fact that it was, I first went to a gym in Melbourne, and like day one, like you're rolling. It's not like, okay, do 6 months of like technique and form, and then, once you kind of show that, then we might put you into some light sparring. It's like, okay, new guy, we've done the technique, we're all warmed up, and roll. So you get to, you get that instant kind of application and get to learn on the fly really, really quickly. And I think for me, as at that stage when I first started, we just had our second kids, and my wife and I had our second kid, and we were real kind of deep into that young family mode, which is which is like savage in its own way, but not kind of like a great expression of physicality. It's savage because of the lack of sleep, of the stress, of all those other things that are happening. So to be able to go and just blow off the steam for for an hour, a couple of times a week on the mat. My wife, at first she was like, oh yeah, no worries, just, you just go and do your jiu-jitsu while I stay here with the kids. But then she saw that like I came back as this kind of much happier, more grounded, more more centered person, because I'd had that opportunity to outlet. Like she
Bash someone.
Yeah, exactly. Or she outletted to her friends, like her outlet was catching up with her girlfriends who had kids and, swapping tales while the kids played and, kind of comparing experiences. But for me, that wasn't an outlet. That was like okay. That's what we're having a chat.
someone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like it's a great way to stop the mind chatter when you've got someone with knee on belly, and you're trying to desperately escape that position. You're not really thinking about what was that I had to do in the garden out there tomorrow.
It doesn't give you a chance to drift, does it?
No. You've got to
form
be
of meditation, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
It's being in the present.
Yep. So that's So I guess that's the kind of way that I came to be here. And during lockdown, I've started working with a mate on his oyster lease, and there's no mobile phone reception down there. And I was doing quite a repetitive task in a shed, and so I'd download some podcasts at home and listen to them. And so I started downloading the JB podcast. And so it's not very nice to kind of sit here and actually see your faces because your voices are very familiar.
That's so cool.
And and then I just remember, I think, a couple of weeks back you posted that there was a new app up, and I just, had been following JB for a while on Instagram, and just, dropped a comment and was like, love the content that you guys are putting out. I'm really enjoying it. And I got a follow back. I was like, oh, how good is this? Thanks for the follow back. I'd love to come and train with you guys one day. And here I am. And I think it was you,
lovely.
Joey, that was like, well, don't just come and train with me. You like the podcast. Come and have a chat.
Jump on, brother. Seemed like a nice fella.
Yeah, well, looks, and sounds can be deceiving.
Did you grow up on a farm?
No, I grew up in a very rural community, Murrurundi. Being able to spell that from a young age is what I credit my high level of adult literacy to. So it's 900 people, top of the Hunter Valley before you go over to the Liverpool Plains. But
Mining town.
No. It's there's like Scone, Muswellbrook, Singo, definitely mining towns. But Murrurundi, it used to be the end of the line for the like early days train track. So it used to be this like town of like 5,000 people with 30 pubs, but now it's, they punched a hole through the mountain and that was defunct. But there's a big horse stud there owned by the Sheikh of UAE, and that's about it.
Holy shit.
Yeah, Emirates
So that
Park.
holds a town together in a way.
In a way, yeah. There's a lot of employment there, and the rest is just kind of this like low-fi, low socioeconomic, but like big heart, big community kind of place. And Mum and Dad, we had a small business, or they had a small business called the Murrurundi Trading Post, which was a firearm retailer.
Oh, wow.
So I grew up in a gun shop. And it was like, that was the kind of core part of the business, but they also had, chainsaws and like Levi jeans and, big boots. It was like a toy shop for farmers.
Nice.
Quad bikes?
Quad bikes, yeah. Quad bikes, ag bikes, like small motor repairs. So all those kind of bits. So, and I'd just, as so many children of small business owners do, you just grow up at the business, and so it was a really interesting experience and exposure for me as a young kid because, they had a really broad customer base. Like you'd get dudes that, because it's kind of mountain country up there, you'd get guys that live in like 3-sided corrugated iron lean-tos, in mountain camps that come down to town for flour, sugar, tea and reloading gear, and they'd come in and they'd be wearing like, double pluggers and blue singlets and shorts all year, no matter what the weather. And then alternatively, you'd have the Sheikh from the UAE come in. Like he actually came in.
Jesus.
With
an entourage?
With an entourage, like fully, full entourage.
What did he buy?
Vehicle. He wanted to buy a firearm.
I was going to,
except my mum run was the front of house of the shop. And he was like, just a cultural difference, didn't want to buy a firearm off a woman.
Oh, wow.
Holy shit.
And also like didn't want to have to go through the process of being licensed or, or having to go through that criteria. And Kerry Packer was the same because they've got the Packer family's got their large private property up there as well, at Elliston on the western flanks of the Barrington Tops. And he came in one day and was like, I want a gun. And they're like, well, you got a license, Kerry? And he's like, no, I'm Kerry fucking Packer, and basically put a blank check on the table and said, I want a gun. And they're like, look, you've got nothing to lose here, Kerry. But if you go and shoot yourself in the foot, we're the ones that go broke, And so they're like, just get your farm manager to buy one. Like, we know him. He comes in here every week. Like, get him to buy it for you. And then what happens on the farm, we don't care. But just, I really enjoyed that, even though it was a really small town, getting to have that
diversity there.
Yeah, that exposure. And also, I guess, getting to see the power of community. I kind of touched on this with you, Joe, a bit before, because I currently live in a small town of 2,000 people myself, and realising that country towns, you get out what you put in. Really, like if you kind of think that like nothing's ever going to happen here, or it's kind of like a dead end town, and we don't get any cultural events or we don't get any big shows.
So I was going to give you.
Yeah. But if you organise it, like if you get the committee going and you put in and you like raise the funds and you like make the connections, then that stuff comes. And my parents, without being like weirdo like soccer mums and dads, got on board all the sports that my sister and I played. And like in any small community group, they're always looking for board members, secretaries, presidents, treasurers, blah 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 blah. So they'd always jump on the boards. And like we were the smallest town in the Upper Hunter Valley and the poorest town in the Upper Hunter Valley, but like we always had slick new uniforms and like sweet caps and good gear and like our grounds.
And were you like the captain of the first 15?
Yeah. So yeah, thanks, Dad / president. No, nothing like that. It was all very egalitarian. egalitarian youth sport up there in the Hunter Valley. But you know, I saw that, you know, if you want like a resurfacing of the tennis courts, and then chuck 4 weeks worth of sausage sizzles on. You know, like if you want like kids to get good at tennis, then reach out to a pro in Newcastle and pay him to come up and run a school holiday workshop. And we did all that. Like my parents did all that, so we had this exposure to you know, to kind of like punching above the weight of a small town like that. And I never really appreciated it as a kid. I just thought, just the way it is, right? Like, you know, it's cool. Things happen in little towns. But then talking to other people that grew up in other places that maybe didn't have that same kind of drive in the community, I was like, oh, wow, no, we actually had something really special. So I guess that's one of the other reasons why I'm here, you know. I'm getting proactive, like to, you know, Jungle Brothers visit to Bermagui. Just, how's the calendar looking up there, boys? September's looking pretty open at the moment.
How did you get from working in a gun shop into the kitchen?
So when I turned 18, I guess I realised that I'd had quite, despite seeing a fair bit of diversity at that shop, had a relatively insular upbringing, you know, in terms of like social connection with people beyond an immediate community, and that adaptability of being able to relate to a larger population. And I moved down to Newcastle, and you know, I was kind of meeting people at my same age, and I just felt like I was like 10 years behind, like in terms of, you know, my world exposure and my naivety and my like social abilities, because all my interactions had been with, you know, people that I'd known since the day I was born, you know, and like a nuclear family. And so I thought, okay, well, I'm not going to go to university because that's one form of education, but I feel like where my education's lacking is like a form of worldliness. Like I remember I was working as a kitchen hand at a restaurant, and there was like a couple of backpackers there from New Zealand, and they were like telling me about all the places they'd been in Australia. And I went home and looked at the map and realised that I'd kind of been as far north as the Gold Coast, as far south as Sydney, and as far west as Dubbo. And I was 18, you know, I was like, wow, this is a big continent. And I've lived like this in this like tiny thumbnail shape around the Hunter Valley there, around the East Coast. And so I went for a bit of a journey around Australia for a couple of years. And then I came back to Newcastle and I was working.
Did you do like the full loop? Did you go?
I cut off WA.
Yeah,
which, you know, they'd be glad to hear now, considering I think they're pretty much diverting all that mining equipment to digging a giant trench along the border. Currently, I think they'd like to be, you know, a different nation at the moment. But no, I got, you know, and I hitchhiked as well, which was like, for me, like the ultimate kind of going in the deep end way to do it, you know, and to kind of push yourself beyond your comfort zone to be like, well, you know, I could like book a bus ticket or...
Did you have any creepy experiences?
I don't know about like creepy, but like the best one I had was in Tasmania. And this was pretty early on because I got down to Tassie early. And I was hitchhiking up the East Coast, and this dude in like a rusty old Kingswood ute picks me up. And he's like, where you going, mate? I'm like, oh, I'm heading up to Lonnie. He's like, yeah, I can get you most of the way there. And, you know, and he had like, you know, 3 teeth, and, you know, he was smashing cans of Woodstock, and he was like, had a little pipe. He was smoking a bit of weed, like driving, like all this while driving along. And he was he was a nice fella, you know. He was like, we're having a good chat about life and stuff. And he's like, oh, so you're traveling around, are you? I'm like, yeah. He's like, oh, you probably want to see some stuff, don't you? You don't see anything hitchhiking. I'm like, yeah, yeah. He's like, oh, there's this amazing waterfall. You got to see it. Oh, you got to see it. I'm like, okay, let's do it. And he like, so we're on the kind of East Coast Highway, and we turn off to go to this national park, and there's signs for a waterfall, like national park waterfall. This is all cool, and we kind of like drive like 20 minutes off the highway, and we're kind of going down into this deep bush, and we get to this like national park car park, and you know, no one else there, like no sign of human habitation except like a little, you know, national park information stand. And he kind of rolls the Kingswood ute up to like parking and like kills the engine, pulls the handbrake on, takes a breath for a moment, and then looks over at me and goes, you know I'm going to kill you now, don't you? And like I kind of just laughed like that, like half, you know, confidently calling his bluff, half questioning whether or not I was about to be murdered. And then I was like, no, you're not. And he just lost it. He like cracked up. He's like, I told that to this other bloke last week, and he jumped out of the car doing 60 k's an hour. But by and by it was pretty friendly, you know. It's I never really feared for my life in that. But Except for that moment, it was. He was like, yeah, massive mind games. He loved it. He's like, and obviously it was an old trick, an old trope that he pulled out on anyone that he picked up. You know, he's like,
Was there a waterfall?
There was, and it was spectacular. Like it was actually a really beautiful spot, and I was really grateful for him kind of to take me and showing it to me.
Bastard, what a horrible thing to do to someone.
All good.
Especially around that time. That was like the...
It was Ivan Milat.
Ivan
But that
Milat
was.
era.
And it was like Ivan Milat era, and like it was the year that Wolf Creek came out in
fucking
the
movie,
cinemas.
man.
So like,
Dude.
I'd touch base with like my family, and my mum's like, I saw the Wolf Creek movie. He's like, I don't care where you are. Like, just let me know. I'll get a flight. Come home, please. There's killers out there. But by and by, it was like, actually, it was kind of the opposite of that. It was just like hugely generous and hospitable. Like people would be like, you sweet for somewhere to stay. Like I'm going to my, this is my town. You can stay at my house tonight if you want. I'll give you dinner. I can take you maybe a little bit further tomorrow morning and I'll just turn around. It was, it was actually a really kind of friendly experience, which I really liked. But then I go back to Newcastle and I was about 22 by that stage. And no trade, no job, no degree, and I was working in for a mate's kitchen as a kitchen hand, and I was like, you know what, maybe like I don't mind this work. It's pretty enjoyable. Like I can see as good employment prospects. And I said to him like, oh Samo, why don't you put me on as an apprentice chef? And to him that was like fantastic because he went from paying me as a casual dish hand to like a first year apprentice chef. So like I got to work 4 times as much for half the price while still doing the dishes.
Happy to help you out, mate.
yeah. He's like, oh, great idea, Paul. And then, that restaurant was on, the thriving Newcastle dining strip of Derby Street in Cooks Hill there. It's one of the 2 kind of dining strips in Newcastle. But the business itself was essentially a tax hole. It was owned by a family, and the other core business was a used car dealership, and so the restaurant was purely to lose money. I think just like to write off tax. So it wasn't like a great place to be learning the skills required to be a good hospo practitioner. So I in the end after doing 6 months there, they kind of just folded into a descent of madness, that place, because it was a crazy madhouse. And I thought, well, I want to make a go of this trade. I don't want to come out at the end as a bad chef. Like I'm going to be doing the hours anyway. I'm going to be getting the low pay. I want to come out as a good chef. And so I thought, well, there was only one really good restaurant in Newcastle, and they were full in terms of staff. And so I thought, well, I don't know. Like I don't think I want to live in Sydney because I didn't know that I could afford on apprentice chef wages to live close to the CBD and be able to, because that's usually where the really high-end restaurants are. So I went, okay, I'll move to Melbourne. And got the Age Good Food Guide, started at the front, and the top restaurant at the time was Vue de Monde, which was 3 Hat, which is the pinnacle of the restaurant grading in Australia. It was Australia's best restaurant at the time, awarded multiple times. And I thought, well, I'll start with these guys. Why not? And sent them an email, kind of groveling as a young apprentice, going like, oh, I'm sure you guys get, thousands of people wanting to come work for you, but I'd love the opportunity to come down and, prove myself and have a go. And really what I didn't realise is that kind of environment and that kind of business is they're just like always looking for fresh flesh for the fire. Absolutely. Like 90-hour weeks. Use and abuse. And like they had 0 Melbourne or Victorian staff because it had such a bad rep. So like when they get like an enthusiastic email from like a young, apprentice from interstate, they're like, oh, yeah, come down on your trial.
That's what we do with young personal trainers. We're going to show you how to do everything. You have your own Jungle Brothers in no time.
Clean that toilet. So I spent like a week's wage on return flights and hostel accommodation to get to Melbourne as a first year apprentice chef, and flew down. And I was kind of working on this like casual dining strip in Newcastle with a Fawlty Towers-esque restaurant, only doing 40 hours a week with like no split shifts. And then I landed like the pointy end of the Australian restaurant industry, and it's,
Gordon Ramsay's hell kitchen.
Oh hell yeah! Like it was like a pressure cooker in there, man. It's like the kitchens I went in had 3 staff, and I remember like standing out the front and going, hi, I'm here for the job trial, and they kind of took me behind the curtain and out into the kitchen, and it was a Tuesday morning, which is like the in the shit day, because they shut Sunday, Monday. usually the whole menu, which is very complex and large, was prepped from scratch on a Tuesday morning. So there was like 20 chefs in there, heads down, like manic pace. And I remember just like being walked through there, and it felt like the closest I could imagine to being like trotted through, you know, a prison as a new prisoner, you know, like all these hardened old vets like going, wonder how long this guy will last. And like not having a single bit of bench space to work to. I remember they're like, just grab yourself a board, get on the prep, here's what you need to do. And like just finding this like tiny little like, you know, shelf about that big to stand there and standing there with like splayed feet, like chopping like this, kind of taking it all in. And, you know, and then doing like a 16-hour day, which is the first time I'd done one of those. And and just like not breathing through my nose at all the whole day, just like going panting, and then kind of being spat out into the cold Melbourne air at 11 p.m. going, what just happened? Like, do I want to do this? And I really distinctly remember like on that day one of the trial, like going up to that, like they've got like a mezzanine change room like you guys got here at JB's. And, you know, the head chef took me up and said, like, get changed, get in your whites up here and then come back down straight away. And, like, standing in that kitchen, like in my civvies, getting ready to put on my chef's uniform going, I could probably just, like, escape out the back gate right now. I could probably, like, if I put my chef whites on, I'm like, I'm in. But that looks really intense down there. But I was like, no, you've, like, spent a whole week's wage. And so, yeah, and the trial went well, and you know, I flew back to Newcastle, and I got the call 2 days later, no surprises, saying, yeah, we'd love you to come and sacrifice your life for the greater good. And, yeah, 2 years later, I survived in there, so that was intense.
Nice.
Dude.
Man, 90-hour weeks, killer.
Is there any kind of mentorship going on? Was there someone's like, hey, young fella, let me, it's hard in here, let me give you a hand?
Like it's, no. You were very...
Got to fight for the knowledge.
Really, you did, yeah. And you just had to fight for space. You had to fight for equipment. Like it wasn't a great culture, you know what I mean? It was kind of every man for himself in there. Like there was camaraderie, of course, like because you were kind of doing this shared suffering with the similar people, especially the guys that had been, you know, working with you for 6 months to a year. Like there was a really kind of close camaraderie there. But then really, like if you needed a certain pot, all bets were off, you know, because like you needed that heavy base, large saucepan to get your stock sorted so you'd be ready for lunch service, and it might take you 2 hours of use of that pot. But you get in and someone else has got it and they're going to use it for 3 hours. And you're like, I need that pot. Like, I don't think you understand me. I need that pot. And like people would be like steel trays. And like I remember in one service, my tongs fell apart. Like they just disintegrated, you know. And I looked at the chef and I'm on the fish section. So there's a lot of, you know, hot pans and like you need tongs to shift things in hot pans. I'm like, chef, like my tongs are falling apart. And he's like, what? What do you want me to do? He was French. He's like, what do you want me to do about it? You know, table 20 coming up now. How long? And so, yeah, like I guess it caught this like really like survival instinct that it didn't bring out the best in people, that place. Like it, like
you need a bit of that though.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, because what I was about to say was like one thing that I learned from that experience was the capability of a human, you know, to be able to go, I can work 16-hour days, day after day after day after day after day on 4 hours sleep with like zero let up, like a 16-hour long high intensity workout. Like you hit it at 8 and you're on, and you leave at midnight and then that's it. Like and there is the one pace the whole time, which is flat out. You know, and like my diet was terrible, and like, you know, no sunshine, and like I lost height because everything is
hunched
like
up all day,
16 hours over a bench like this, and like I lost long distance vision because one focal length is like you're just looking from your hunched height to a bench all day.
Did you drink much?
Alcohol?
Yeah. Nah. A lot of chefs I know like to have a drink.
Yeah, well, we like.
I can understand why.
We tied it on on a Saturday night after the final service, but during the week, you couldn't burn the candle at both ends. Like it's to go and drink, or like, you know, everyone's like, oh, you work in these like fine dining restaurants, you guys are on the bags, you know. Surely it's just like cocaine off the pass. It's like, one, I'm on an apprentice chef wage, so I'd probably have to save for like 6 years to be able to have a bump, you know. But so I'm not going to spend my money on that shit. But then to be able to back that up on 4 hours sleep and do and like so not only is the pace unrelenting and maximal, but the precision required is absolute as well. Like when you're at a restaurant like that,
cannot fuck up.
You cannot. Like absolutely zero chance for fuck up. Like the people are coming in and dropping $400-500 a head on a meal, you know, for a big deal. And like you've got this cascading effect if a mistake happens where the whole restaurant can go down. Like one little spoke pops off, and so you got to hold that space and make sure that everything you do on point. So to be able to like have that long-term endurance, that like mental focus, and also being able to look at a docket board and have like 30 tables up there on like a fully booked service, 30 little bits of flapping paper, and know how you are going to prepare each of your components of that dish to be ready in a staggered, like timely environment. It was amazing, like, but not sustainable.
Yeah.
Like it was great to see that capability and to know that if you dig in, you can kind of push to that and you can sustain it for a relatively long period of time. But then like, yeah, no, it wasn't for me. After about 18 months there, I remember like we just used to have these like crazy, you know, like you'd have the adrenal dump mid-afternoon because you'd have the adrenaline of getting ready for lunch service. You'd have a fully booked lunch and then you'd go into like a prep phase before dinner service. And like that was when shit got weird, like because you're tired, you're exhausted, you've just had a massive adrenal dump, and you know you're kind of like off with the fairies. And I just like remember sitting there prepping some stuff one day and just going, "What am I doing here?" You know, I got swept along in the culture because it's like it's a real kind of like you need to want to be here, and if you don't want to be here, there's the door. You know, and because we're doing it, like we're the pointy end of the game here. Like if you want to play with the big boys, this is how it goes. And so you go and get swept along like, yeah, I'm doing it. Like I'm playing for the A grade. But then I was like, wait a second, like I have no social life. Like my body's deteriorating. Like my posture is like shot. I remember like the bottom of my foot peeled off in a shower one morning because like the whole
wet feet.
Wet feet, like hot dry, or wet dry, and like just standing in the shower, you know, at 7 a.m. getting ready to go to work one day and lifted my foot up and the pad fell off. I was like, that's weird. That's not right. I don't like my whole, you know, like a giant blister, and so it's like, yeah, no.
Your hands copper hiding as well.
You'd like. The good thing about working as a chef like that is you always got a seat on public transport on the way to work because you got like all these funky like oven burn marks up your arm, like your hands are all covered in, like you look like a junkie, like you're pale white, you punch out, you're twitching like this, you know, they just saw you chain smoke 2 cigarettes at the tram stop and you're going through your mise en place list, which is like your prep list before, you know, and your foot's tapping, like you've already got that nervous like intensity, and people would see that at the tram stop and go, you know what, mate, just you sit. I'm just gonna go to the other end of the tram up here. It's fine.
They don't know that you're the elite of the elite.
Yeah.
In the kitchen game.
Well, but the other thing that like didn't make sense to me in that environment was like if you're playing for the top side in a sport or if you're at the pointy end of any industry, you're financially remunerated for that fact.
Yeah.
But I was like, as a third-year apprentice, I was probably taking home like $450 a week.
Fuck.
For 90 hours.
Wow.
Which is cool because
Robbery.
you're not, you know, you don't have any time to spend it anyway. So I was actually managing to save money while paying rent and doing all that because all you do is work and sleep, but more so work. But yeah, that didn't. I'm like, if this was like a sporting team, and I like this is like playing for the Wallabies, you know, or wearing a baggy green cap for Test cricket. Like I'd be getting paid the big bucks, and the big bucks are here. The boss drives an Aston Martin. Like they've got the biggest collection of Dom Perignon in the Southern Hemisphere. Like people are spending $500 a head. There's money here. I just don't see any of it. So I was like, you know what? Like I don't like this churn and burn kind of thing. Feel like I'm being used. But I guess mentally I framed it at the time to not be like, you know, sad or depressed about it, was that I was at the best culinary university in Australia and I was on a scholarship. It was hard, but I was getting paid. You know, I wasn't spending money. I didn't come out with a debt. I came out with, you know, a kind of little bit of savings, and I got to put that place on my resume, which held me in really good stead for everything that happened after it.
So did you open up your own restaurant at any stage? Or?
No, that wiped the interest for me in that.
Yeah.
Like seeing that, you know, if that's the end game, that's like the real pointy end, then I was like, nah, that's not for me. Like I like being outside. I like, you know, having a life. I like, you know, waking up early and going to bed at night, not like going to bed at 1 a.m. and waking up at 10 a.m. and being exhausted. So, and I guess for me, I'd like, after that experience, I wanted to transition to something a little bit more outdoor centric. And so I wanted to take those skills that I'd kind of developed as a chef at the very high end, to more food growing, you know, to like gardening, vegetable gardening, market gardening, food production. And so, you know, I met my wife while I was working there. That was probably one of the best things to come out of that whole experience. Other, you know, like, that's not being very generous to those 2 years, but the best thing that came out of it was meeting my partner there. And we moved down to Tasmania with that kind of idea of, you know, eventually getting on a little farm down there, and, you know, keeping like a small holding and keeping chooks and pigs and ducks and raising veggies and fruit trees and kids, and we'd been there for a couple of years, and then River Cottage happened.
Nice. So, question, and I'm asking this on behalf of my business partner Joe, because he's gagging to be famous.
Oh,
how did you nail River Cottage?
oh well,
What am I going to do?
Whatever it takes, Joe. And it takes a lot. So I get asked that like a fair bit, you know, because it was a real kind of stroke of luck for me to be thrust into the spotlight like that in such a really kind of large way. But the advice that I give people is really disappointing usually, because it was I was just living in Tasmania with the view of kind of doing the same things that the program was about anyway. That was like a personal interest area of mine. And someone got in touch with me, a family friend, and said that they were casting for the host of River Cottage Australia, and suggested they thought I'd be perfect for it, and they suggested that I apply. And I was like, oh yeah, okay. Had a bit of a look at it, I actually didn't have a look at the application. I just had a little bit of a think about, you know, the process, because it was franchised from a UK program with Hugh Fearnley-Whittingstall, and they'd been running for about 18 years, and I was a massive fan of that program. And I thought, you know...
Has it been 18 years?
Yeah.
I remember watching that when I was living in London quite a lot.
Yep.
I didn't realise it was running that long.
Long time. Yeah.
Oh.
From you know, there was some big layoffs in there, but generally over a course of 18 years from...
And you met him now?
Yeah, he came to the farm.
He's a cool dude.
Yeah, he's a
Is
very
he a cool dude?
He's a cool dude.
He seems like on
he's
TV,
a really
sometimes
cool dude. Yeah.
they look like that, and then you meet them for
Yeah.
real and they're not.
No, he was, if anything, he was probably more so than what you get on TV.
Oh, wow.
Like, more of a legend
Yeah.
in real life, you know. But I was a big fan of his, you know, as an individual. Like, I thought, man, this guy's so switched on. He's hyper intelligent. He's like really communicative and accessible and affable in that, you know, kind of British, you know, country aristocracy way. Oh, I've got a double barrel last name and a red convertible, and I have a farm. Of course you love me. And I thought, well, you know, Australian version of it. It was about the same time that Top Gear Australia had come out, and I was seeing how heavily that had bombed. You know,
Yeah.
I didn't know we did an Aussie
we
one.
did like 2
it was
episodes. I
bad.
think they axed it like mid-season. Like,
Was it anyone that we'd know?
it was like Shane Warne, Shane Jacobson, and so, you know, as like the
Warne, you're
Shane
setting
Club.
up set,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I was like, well, you know, my name's not Shane for starters, so, and I'm not like, if it bombed and I was the host, like, I don't go back to being Shane Warne. I would be the guy that stuffed River Cottage, you know, like
Yep.
that idiot that like tried to franchise River Cottage and just ruined it. So I didn't apply at all. And then on the very last day of application, or the application window was open, I was like sitting at home at my house in Tassie, and was like, well, you know, well, it wouldn't hurt. Go on, I may as well just like fill out the application. Hadn't even looked at the application. Got in like 6 p.m. and like thought it'd just be like a, you know, what's your name, what's your address, tell us in 50 words why you should be, you know, the host. And in reality, it was this like, you know, 10-page like deep dive psychological test. And I was like, oh, doing my chef typing skills, which is, you know, kind of like 2-finger typewriter, and like answering the questions and kind of thinking to myself, I was like, wow, these I've got a lot of answers for these questions, and and the answers I was giving, I was like, as I was writing them, I'm kind of like, well, I'm being honest, but I kind of feel like they're going to think that I'm making these answers up to tell them what they want to hear. But it was like a lot of questions around food and community and you know, things that I was really passionate about anyway. And one of the casting directors, so there was kind of 3 weird things that I found out afterwards about my application process. One was the series producer told me that one of the things that got me over the line was that one of the questions in the questionnaire was describe your dream property. And they said that when they were reading it, he was actually sitting at the farm that would eventually host the program. And he's reading my application. He's like, this guy has just like described this farm.
What are you looking at?
to the letter, to the blade of grass, including its like orientation, its soil type, its proximity from the nearest village, proximity from the coast, like a joint, like everything. And he's like, whoa, okay, so this guy, well, he'll probably like this place then because it's a very accurate description. And the second one was that, after I sent my application through at, stroke of midnight, the next day they extended the application window for another 2 months. I was like, oh, well, if they had, if mine was good, they probably would have just given me the job, right? But I talked to the casting producer that then went on to be the showrunner, and she said that we left the office on that Friday and we were kind of like, we've got some good applicants, but we just, we can probably make it work. And then they came in the next day and there was one application that came in overnight and it was mine. And one of the kind of interns read it and they're like, Jody, you might want to read this application coming in overnight. And then they said, they never told me this until many years after. They're like, the guy's applied. Have a read of this because we're pretty sure the dude has applied overnight. This, I don't know if he's making these answers up, but this guy I think is our guy. And so the third weird part of that was I actually went over to the UK once we were right into the kind of third season of the show to visit the mothership, catch up with the Whittingstalls, the Fernley Whittingstalls over in Devon, and the kind of director that directs Hughes programs over there. They're all kind of Oxford alumni and, kind of quite the wealthy, London set. And they had this schoolhouse up on the Inner Hebrides, on an island off the Isle of Skye in Scotland. He's like, while you're here, Paul, if you'd like a little bit of time away with the missus, I've got this, retreat up in the Hebrides that you're welcome to spend a weekend. I'm like, yes, please. So we went up there and this so you're on Scottish mainland, you go over a bridge to Isle of Skye, you catch a ferry to Isle of Rasay, you drive to the top of the island, the end of the road, and then you walk 2 k's into this schoolhouse.
Holy shit.
And it's just overlooking the loch, and it's like the ultimate, like Hemingway writer's retreat. It's just open fire, bookshelf, bed, kitchen, that's it. And so we're in there. He's got this big bookshelf, and I'm like, there was a title I was interested in, and I started thumbing through it, and then got to the back cover and found my name written in pencil. No shit. So he must have got the call about, the fact that they decided to give me the hosting role while there in that spot, reading that book, and he just scribbled in there. I showed my wife.
That is awesome.
I was like, Leash, check this shit out. And she's like, what? So it's a book on the overexploitation of the EU fishing stocks. I'm like, yeah, babe, but there's more to it than that. Look at that. So that's why I kind of thought whoa, that was that was meant to be. And so in the end I got it out of 1,300 applicants.
Holy
which was the pointy, I'd never really wanted that, I never thought
big gig.
Big gig, and I realised that there'd be a whole lot of sacrifices that came along with that, like the sacrifice of anonymity, most importantly, that's, you're kind of doing a primetime national TV production.
Famous.
Yeah, famous. Hey, can't you tell? That's my driver out the front right now. No, I think what I do is at the really, I don't even think it gets a celebrity listing. I think it's probably X grade or something like that, what I do, which is perfect because I can, I get to have this, do
Could
this
add some
work.
fan base though, for sure.
River Courage is a cult program. I'm just putting it out there. Yeah. I think it's it's going to endure. We last shot it, first shot it in 2013, last shot it in 2016, and SBS and Foxtel are both plugging it still. And I still get heaps of people that have come to it for the first time, especially during COVID lockdown. And it's because it's about growing food and connecting to community and cooking honest food, there's a timeless kind of quality to it, and it's not competitive. It's not who's going to be eliminated from the farm this week. It looks like the pig. So it's kind of really good natured, good heart. And I guess I kind of think of it as the bush tucker man of its generation. You know what I mean?
When you're on the farm, are you actually living on it, or is it a kind of cut?
It's cardboard cutout. Yeah. It's actually down Fox Studios. It's just a big green screen.
The Bear Grylls. Do you know Bear Grylls got
Mars bars and stuff?
You're supposed to be in a cave, naked, ice cave overnight, and supposedly got caught up the pub with the crew.
Yeah, back to the Ritz.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm just trying to tell a story here, really. It's, this is what I would do if I was in this situation. Pound for pound, a pint of lager has more protein than an ice cave. So for the first year, I did live on the farm. So I'm not on the farm
Alone?
anymore.
With the missus and
Alone because I had 2 weeks notice from living in Tasmania to start filming. Like I got the call, They're like, you got the job, we start in 2 weeks. You said you could get up here in 2 weeks, so we need you here in 2 weeks.
You're like, fuck.
I was like, I really wasn't expecting to have to follow through on that commitment, but damn it, yeah, man, I'm a word bugger. And my wife, she was working in a restaurant in a very senior front of house position, and they'd been really good to us as a family since we moved there. So she couldn't
walk away.
Couldn't walk away without really stitching up some people that were really good to us. So I moved up, and she stayed for 6 months, so I lived on the farm and did all the bit, but
get a bit lonely at all?
Oh hell yeah, it was weird.
I know you got the crew there during the day, kind of, but then
it was because you're like the crew would then go like they didn't stay on the farm; they were staying in holiday accommodation in Narooma, which is about half an hour away. So like for the first week, I'm up there just like twiddling my thumbs in this like big empty cold ass farmhouse, like with no insulation, and it was ventilated, like there was so many gaps in floorboards. And so that's when I hit them up. I was like, yeah, you guys care if I get a dog? And they're like, genius. Oh my God, genius. We knew you got the job for a reason. You want to get a puppy, aren't you? I was thinking about getting a week. Oh, like, yes, he's going to get a puppy. All right, it goes up onto the whiteboard like episode 2. Paul gets dog. What are you going to call it? I'm like, I was going to call it Digger. And they're like, oh, we love it. So they were mad for it. So yeah, it did get pretty lonely up there. But we did have the kind of hustle and bustle of the crew, and it was actually kind of nice because I was like just thrown under the bus in the production, like going from like no media experience whatsoever to like a high end prime time like Foxtel glossy lifestyle production. It was kind of nice to then have that like defrag time at the end of each shoot day, which the shoot days go for 10 hours, and it is like it's a stunning property. Like it's right at the base of that Gulaga volcano, and it was in a really good season. Like they were, no drought. Like everything was green and lush, and so it was nice to kind of connect with the actual place itself rather than the TV production. So I lived there for that first 6 months, and then I went to Tassie, got my wife, and brought her back up, and we lived in the farmhouse for a bit, but she hadn't seen it during production because we'd do 3-month production blocks, and then the rest of the time it was kind of just ours to manage. And I was like, look, babe, like it's nice now, but when there's like 20 people here for 10 hours a day for 3 months, we like the whole house was a production set. It'd be like,
nothing's private.
Nothing's private. Like one bedroom, one bedroom and a little adjoining bathroom were the only private parts of the entire house. And so we like, no, we're going to live so we lived on the farm next door. Cool. We're there 7 days a week. So it was kind of a bit of both, T. It wasn't maybe as kind of factual as the program led you to believe. Like I didn't own the house, it wasn't my farm, but I lived there, I tended it for 7 days a week. Like I fed all those animals, I grew those vegetables, I planted those trees. Like I did, like that bit was all real. But I guess the funny thing for me also was that like the realest part of it was when we weren't in production.
Yeah, when everyone
was
goes
gone.
home.
Yeah. So like the TV part was like when the viewer sees it, they're like, oh, this is the real stuff. But I'm like, for me, that was like the least real part of it. And then for that other, 6 months of the year between the two productions would be when I'd actually do the most farm work. Because when you're doing a 10-hour shoot day with like, cooking, indoor cooking shoots and stuff like that, you can't do the farm stuff. Yeah, we had to hire someone during that time to do the farm work because I was so tied up with the production. And then when production wrapped, I'd do all that work that I was doing on camera, but not really, it was
Did you have to slaughter anything?
Yeah, for sure.
Damn.
Yeah.
And that would have been, I'm guessing, you, or you did a bit of that in Tassie?
We did a bit of both. Oh no, sorry. It was I'd done a bit of hunting as a kid growing up, but like mainly just rabbits, you know, like shooting rabbits with a 22 and cooking them up in the camp oven. And I'd when I was living
confronting
Oh, absolutely.
If a pig or
well, the
something.
pig
I
was
mean,
massive.
I've never
The-
done one,
The pig
but
was
I've watched
massive.
a pig get
I,
killed.
I saw a little clip of you talking about when you had to drive the pigs to the abattoir down south.
Oh man, that was that was pretty gruesome. So yeah, it definitely
Pretty lovable animals, aren't they?
They
pigs?
are, and you know, you develop relationships with them. You know, like it's because they're an animal that requires a relatively high amount of care and
they're
interaction.
pretty smart.
They're smart, you know, and so you're feeding them every day. Like some of the pigs that I killed to eat, I birthed as well. You know, I was like there for the moment that they kind of came into the world, and fed them every day for 6 to 9 months before I then killed them as well. But that's it definitely made me appreciate quality of meat and the fact that like a life has been taken, you know, to put meat on the table. Like we're so sanitized from that. You know, it's but some
You don't waste anything.
No, because like
Once
if
like
like it's heavy.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just like, oh, I might just like get some bacon, you know, burn a bit, chuck it in the bin, whatever. You're like, fine. Like I raised this animal every day of its life, so I put like 9 months worth of effort into its care and its love, and then like I had to like be the one that pulled the trigger on the day. Like I had to consciously like, you know, point a small firearm at it and go, that's it, you're done. Like, and I'm going to be the one that pulls the trigger, and so that's hard. But I think if there's reverence there, which like to a vegan or a vegetarian that might sound like a little bit counterintuitive. Like it's like, well, if you've got reverence for it, why wouldn't you just not eat it? But I mean, I am an omnivore, and I, you know, and meat consumption has been a part of human existence for a very, very, very long time. But I think if it's done with reverence and done in high welfare practices, then it's not as bad. Like I'm 100% against factory farming. Like it's you know, packing things into sheds and, you know, and just like treating them as a production unit rather than like a being. That shit's criminal. But like the animals that we had on the farm, they had, you know, 300 good days, half a really bad day, you know, and when, especially if we like killed on farm, it was oblivious. You know, they'd be out in the paddock, green grass, we'd put a little bit of feed on the ground, they'd go for it and we'd shoot them point blank and they'd be dead instantly, you know. But then like you mentioned, Joe, about like transporting them to the abattoir, which is the way all the meat that we eat is processed through an abattoir. It's a part of Australian food handling practices. That is high stress to the animals and to me. Like you know, they've lived their life on a farm. All of a sudden, you're packing them in the trailer or the back of a truck, taking them to an abattoir where they're on. Yeah, they're on, and there's fear.
That would have to have an effect on the meat, and
absolutely,
pumping it full of adrenaline, and
absolutely
getting it all tight. And shit.
Yep. Without a doubt, that's myopic shock. I think they call it. It's where it floods it becomes acidic and tough and. Yeah, and that's why they can't farm kangaroos apparently because they can't be corralled or herded. They get so stressed that that the meat's inedible. So kangaroo can only be wild harvested.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So it's but that
fast twitch muscle fiber.
Yeah.
There's my partner. She's quite into the regenerative agriculture kind of permy thing, and she's been talking lately about. We don't have any property or animals, but we'd like to one day.
Yeah.
And she's talking about these mobile abattoirs.
Yep.
That will come around to your property.
Yeah,
and sort of do it there. But I'm guessing that, and it's beautiful, right? Like that seems like the way to go.
Yeah.
But you can't. You were saying you can't then sell that meat.
Correct. Yeah.
So for it to be a commercial product, you have to go to like a registered abattoir.
Correct. And it's and as is increasingly the way in our food production system, they're getting bigger and more centralised, those abattoirs.
We're obsessed with centralisation.
Yeah.
In so many different ways.
Yep. So if I was to raise pigs on the South Coast now, even since I used to be down there, or we used to be raising pigs down there, we used to have an abattoir 1 hour away at Maruya, but now they don't do pork anymore. So I'd have to drive my pigs to Picton.
It's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Because you're bringing all these animals into the one area.
Yep.
And one of them could be sick or treated like shit.
Yeah.
And have a really bad immune, get sick from cross
the stress of that travel
something
as
else.
well.
And then you bring them all together.
Yep.
You shove them into a pen and spread that shit around.
It's a broken system.
Is it that we want like accountability? They need to be able to trace where it came from? Is that at the heart of it?
You can do that. You know, like it's.
Yeah.
I think it's like it's the get big or get out mentality. Like
Yeah, right. It's
increasingly,
capitalism
like that
best.
food has become corporatized, and the kind of family-owned farm is becoming a thing of the past. And you know, and like expense and loans and everything's getting bigger. So like they get bigger and bigger and bigger, and then they fold, and then the next biggest farm buys them, and eventually like it becomes too big for a family to own, so it becomes corporatized, and they've got that interest. They're looking at food production purely as like a logistical chain experience.
Yeah.
So they don't want to have to be like bringing carcasses in from like 20 regional abattoirs. They just want to bring the trucks to the big plant, and then they use that as
Put it
their
in a packet.
primary distribution point.
Everyone pays.
Yeah, but in terms of like eating quality, you cannot compare to on farm. It's chalk and cheese. It's like, you know, the difference between like a hydroponic tomato grown in Queensland bought in July down here in the middle of winter, and like an heirloom variety off your vine in your backyard, still warm from the sun in the middle of January.
Yeah.
You know, they're not even the same thing. You know, it's like one, you know, it's like the other one doesn't deserve to be called a tomato. And I feel like, you know, we have forgotten what amazing real food tastes like. Like, and it's
A lot of people don't like it. Like it's often too flavoursome for folks. Isn't it?
Well, we're so accustomed to this like low baseline of flavour, and flavour is nutrition, really. Like intense flavour is usually a hallmark of high nutrition, and I mean that's just the way it is. Not to like shit on people for their like food choices, but if you like only can buy your fruit and veg and your meat from a major supermarket, then like you're at like a consistent level, but it's very low. You know, like in terms of like ultimate quality, like, yeah, you're going to live on it and you survive on it and your kids will grow on it and all that. But if you compare it to like homegrown, high quality or small diversified farm raised stuff, like there's no comparison.
No. And it's interesting, even when you speak to like a dietitian or nutritionist, they'll go over the same things: protein content, fat, vitamins, minerals, all these kind of things.
Yes.
And then they'll tell you to eat this particular veggie and this meat.
Yep.
But within those categories, there's such a huge range of like shit.
Yeah.
All the way to like gold and everything in between.
Yep.
So yeah, it's interesting.
I mean, starting to cook, for example, if you wanted to learn just how to cook meals from scratch for yourself. Like if you were to only use, you know, to make like a pasta sauce and it says, like, get a kilo of tomatoes, and you get a kilo of those like cricket ball tomatoes from the supermarket.
I wonder why it tastes like shit.
And you're like, is it me? Can I just not cook? I'm a bad cook. Okay, so I'm just going to go back to eating like manufactured hyperpalatable food, because my brain, when I eat it, it fires. It's like, man, this is great. It's got fat, it's got sugar, it's got all this stuff that I want. I'm hardwired to want, so I'm going to keep eating this, because I tried cooking fresh, healthy food and it tasted like crap.
Yeah.
But if you were to like take those same tomatoes from your backyard and run them through a passata mill and roast them a little bit, and it wouldn't matter if you use store-bought pasta for that, and just a little bit of basil, a little bit of salt and pepper, and you'd eat that and you'd be like, whoa, man, my mind is blown. Yeah. And that was, for me, that was like the real beautiful thing about like learning my culinary trade through French cookery, because, you know, like so many cuisines, its foundation was on agrarianism. Like it was a cuisine developed from small farms growing things and making the most out of that regional abundance. And there's a real kind of approach in French cookery that I love. That's like simplicity is key, you know. It's like that if you can do the simple stuff really well, like with high quality ingredients, then that's mastery. You know, like anyone can throw 1,000 ingredients together and make some sort of whiz bang complicated thing. But if you can take 3 ingredients and turn it into something like that blows people's mind, that's where the real skill's at.
Italian cuisine is similar to that.
Exactly. Yeah, they're just on the different side of the Alps. Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, it's like what you've got at hand, high quality ingredients, fresh as possible, as little as possible.
And what it tastes like.
Yeah.
Rather than what it looks like, you know?
Yeah.
When we've gone down that market path, and you'll see like little fruit flies hanging around the tomatoes and holes in them and funny shapes. And they're the ones all the mamas are going for.
Yeah. Because they know. Because the bugs know.
Yeah.
You know, they're hanging around it because they're like, whoa, this is ripe and this is not coated in chemicals. And this is like, the insects can smell the carbohydrates, the sugars in there. They're like, oh, yes, please. But we look and go, oh, yuck. Oh, I'm going to get in that plastic wrapped cricket ball over there instead.
And cook it next week.
Yeah, cook it next week. Yeah. It would probably just turn to mush in the bottom of the fridge, you know. It's but yeah, so having like that access to amazing food. And I mean, like, I fear that there's like a level of elitism in that, you know, that it's like if you're living out in like a food desert, like suburbs out west, southwest, like any outskirts of the city, and you've only got your Woolies choice, I'm like, oh, you should be buying like organic produce. It's amazing. And they go, yeah, I don't live in Bondi, mate.
Yeah.
You know, like I can't go down to my Whole Foods shop and just like pick that stuff up from my farmer's market, mate, because that doesn't exist here. We've got Woolies and my kids' stuff, you know, or we eat Hungry Jacks. But that's where like taking that control or trying to have some sort of sovereignty over your own food production. Whereas like, you know, it's maybe buying like really expensive, you know, organic produce from an inner city kind of trendy Whole Foods joint. Yeah, that's expensive. But like buying a packet of heirloom seeds from the Diggers Club for $3.50 for 1,000 seeds, that's not expensive. No. You know what I mean? That's cheap as chips.
And they even sell the family seed pack.
Yeah.
You seen that one?
Yeah, well, you don't even have to think about like
what's that one?
I don't know.
I think you could produce like 500 kilos of vegetables
based on a 10 square meter, 10 meter
Holy
square
shit.
space. Yeah.
And it's an assortment of different seeds in the pack.
Correct.
Great
That's
seed.
cool.
Yeah,
awesome variety.
They're onto it.
And I mean, the shit that you learn and your kids learn in that process goes way beyond just the food that it produces, doesn't it?
Without a doubt, you know. It's so my kids, like, I'm not like some, you know, Instagram nutritionist influencer where I'm like, look at my kids just knocking back another bowl of steamed broccoli. It's amazing. Like my youngest one, he's like,
was it sausages and something with tomato sauce?
Yeah, exactly. You saw it, you know, like my kid, my 3-year-old, he's like, I'm like, boy, what do you want for dinner? He's like, what do we have for dinner? I'm like, tell him, he's like, yuck. He's like, I like fish and chips and calamari and pizza and barbecue sauce, because that's the treat that we get like once every week or so. So like I'm a realist. Like I'm not there going, your kids should be eating steamed quinoa too, people. You know, but when you put them in the garden and you're just like, you can eat that, pick that off, you can eat that. Like kids are like locusts in that case. They're like, they get that vision, like that food vision. They're like, oh, I can eat this one and this, and like it's living food. Like we don't. Other than, you know, if you're including fermented foods in your diet, like we don't really eat living foods anymore. Like as soon as something is picked from the ground or from the tree or picked from the bush, like it starts to die. Yeah, and there's a process of like enzymatic reduction that happens, you know, pretty quickly. But when you're eating it fresh off the plant, like it's a living thing. You know, and we that nourishes us in an incredible way. And so, yeah, if you can't get your kids to eat veggies, grow veggies.
Grow them. And also the time and effort that they put into growing it.
Yeah.
Watching it grow, and then it's like, okay, you actually want to eat it.
Yeah.
Like, as a kid, you're like, okay, well, I fucking grew that.
Yeah, I've been watching that carrot for 2 months.
I'm going to be the one that eats it. So what else?
I remember TMI taking me through a tour of your old garden at Hereford Street, and she was, you know, she was showing me, this T's little girl, she's showing me, you know, that's you know, the fucking blueberries, that's the strawberries. Look, there's a strawberry there. See the strawberry? Look, that's the lettuce. Like, she was super proud of it.
It's ownership of it.
Yeah.
And exactly, and pride. And like, and we've got chooks in the backyard, and like my 5-year-old's like a chook whisperer. I don't have to do anything. Like I built the coop and bought the chickens in, and that was the last of the effort that I've like had to put into it. Like he gets up, and I don't have to be like, make sure you go feed the chooks, mate. You know, don't forget them. He's like, he's out of bed, shoes on. He's out the back. He's out there for half an hour. He's like in the coop with them. He's like carrying one around. He's like, we got an egg, and I fed him as well. And I'm like, and that's his morning before school. I'm like, how good's that? Like, and he has ownership of it as well, you know. And just like, you know, like you just said, when people come over, he's like, talks to them about the chooks. He's like, this one's not laying yet, and this one's that breed, and it'll lay blue eggs, and that'll lay brown eggs. Like they go mad for it. So it's kids. I think, you know, there's an instinct in there. Like every animal in the world has an instinct around the food that it eats. You know, it kind of is born into the world with, you know, an intrinsic knowledge of what to eat, and it's exposed through family as well. But so kids, like, they gravitate towards real food. You know, if it's there and they're exposed to it, like I find that it doesn't take much coercion. Like we did a rooster kill on a friend's farm the other day. They've got a big free range chicken operation, and so they also raise a lot of roosters as part of that because they raise their own stock. And we had to kill 60 roosters. It's a once a year thing.
What happens? What do you do with the?
We boil them up.
Yep.
For like stock. We just make, and it's epic stock, you know. It's like it's like this cream, but in stock version, you know. It's like the gelatin set on it's just through the roof. Oh, I like that. And then we like pick all the meat and make salads and stuff, and keep all the offal and make patés and things like that. But like my 5-year-old was in there. Like, and he had his own chickens at home at this stage. So he was like, he's a chicken lover, you know, and he's like, so like we kill them. And he's like, and we're like, yeah, mate, we like they're gone. And he's like, are we going to kill our chickens at home? I'm like, no, we're not going to kill those ones, but these ones, we're going to kill them. We're going to eat them. He's like, okay. And got involved in the process. Like he's plucking. He's like, he didn't cut one. He didn't kill one with his own hand, but he like put him in the cone and like plucked him, and he was fascinated. But it was somber for him. It wasn't like a Tarantino thing. Like, yeah, let's rip in here, Dad. How cool is this? All the blood and guts. He was like, you could see that it was like a real reflective, somber thing for him. But then he kind of like went, okay, I have to do this. Or I want to do this now as a part of, I'm like, mate, you're 5. Like, I wasn't thinking about that shit when I was 5. It's all right about finger painting, It's like, good on you, kid, you deep little fella.
We just came back from a trip up to Mullumbimby, and on the way we stopped at the Shannon at Jeff Lawden's permaculture research facility, which was
the famous PRI.
Mate, that guy. I've had a man crush on him.
Is he one of the godfathers?
He is, yeah. He's like second gen. He's like the big player in second gen permaculture. It was David Holgram and Bill Mollison were the founders of the concept.
Molison's protege,
yeah. And he's like, and Jeff's focus went to like major landscape, manipulation for it. Did you ever see that doco Greening the Desert where he got went to Jordan and
he's going to Jordan. Yeah. He's actually transformed a bunch of desert landscapes into like food paradise forests with water like tables and stuff like that. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah,
like
large scale
worth
stuff.
to watch. Yeah,
he's amazing.
Impressive.
Yeah. How was that?
It was like we arrived and missed the camping turn off because you can camp on his land, and you can camp there, you can do workshops there, or you can just volunteer to do work. We were on a holiday, me and my wife and the kids. I had secretly planned to volunteer to do some work, but I didn't tell my wife. I don't know
you
that I'm going to be working.
devil.
So I was like, we'll just go camping here. And she was like, yeah, okay, cool. And then
you can also help on the farm, it says here, babe.
She was actually pretty pissed off. I didn't think she'd be as angry as she was.
She's pretty pregnant right now.
Yeah, she's pregnant right now. So she just wanted to lie around and chill. And when we got there, it was like it's like a working farm. And she's like, when she got out of the tent, she was like, I feel like I need to be doing something right now. And then she looked at me and she goes, you knew this place was the farm. And I was like, yeah. But anyway, we missed a turn off and we ended up outside this clay, it was a, what do you call the hay bale, it was a hay bale house.
Straw bale
house.
Yeah.
Big thick walls and then coat mud all over them. And out sitting in the front of this huge dam, which is like the size of a little, it looked like a little lake, which I found out later that Jeff dug out and created this huge, like a food forest around it. You could just walk through and just eat from every tree. And the only trees that you didn't eat from were pushing nitrogen back into the soil to help these other trees next to it grow into fruit-bearing trees. And anyway, we get there. And I'm sitting outside this house going, oh man, I think we've taken like the wrong turn off. I don't know where we are. It was dark. And then I see these gumboots and pajamas. And then I hear this, are you okay there? And I was like, oh my God, it's fucking Jeff. It's Jeff. My wife goes, it's fucking Jeff Lawden.
Hello, hi,
like,
Mr. Lawden.
I jump out. I'm like, oh, hi, Jeff. Hi, mate, big fan. I'm like, oh gosh, I'm a little bit starstruck right now. And I'm like chatting away and he's like, kind of looking at me and he's scratching his head. Poor guy, it was like 9 o'clock and he would have been in bed by 7.
Yeah, classic farmer. Yeah.
And then he's like, oh, look, I'll get you to turn around. I'll show you where the campsite is. Just follow me. And as I jump in the car, I see like a set of Olympic rings and a little workout area.
Oh.
And I'm like, fuck, SkyTrains. I come in. I got a connection already. And I turn around and he starts sprinting up the hill. He's 65, like full sprint, gumboots, pajamas, beard, sprinting up the hill. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm following Jeff Lawden. He's sprinting up a hill in his pajamas. And my wife looks at me and goes, can you just fucking call it? Yeah. you need to calm down.
He's going to be here tomorrow. Don't worry.
And I'm like, because my wife's a professional dancer, used to be.
Right.
And I said, I want you to imagine that as Madonna.
Yeah.
in her pajamas, and you're outside her house, and she's sprinting you to stay somewhere like on her property, and
Yeah.
she was like, "Oh, okay, I get it."
You got me, babe.
Yeah, it was like a masterclass in cooking because no one's there.
Yes.
It's the whole COVID thing. Usually the place has heaps of students coming through it, lots of people, digging holes and laying, swales and all the rest of it. But because no one had been there for ages, it was just me, my wife, 2 other couples, and him.
Oh.
And we had him for it was like about 4 days, kind of
Right.
four full days of just working in the garden. And the way he worked soil, the way he layered like his poo and his straw, he'd make like these huge cakes out of like different ingredients, and then they'd break down and they'd go into the soil, and then the soil would we'd put a top layer on that. But when he was even working his seedlings, he had like a special hand kind of souffle thing going on, and then he would layer inside that like a nest worm castings and a little bit of something else, and then another drizzle, and then the seed. The way the seed would be placed was a special way of placing the seed at the top, and then he'd do like this little swoosh over the top, and I was like, oh my gosh,
There's so much to it.
that is spectacular.
And he's a master.
Yeah.
And you can imagine like the quality of food that he would be eating.
It was like walking through the Garden of Eden.
Yeah.
I kid you not, you could walk down these swales and you would just be like shopping.
Yeah.
And you'd get way more than you need because everything looks fantastic. It's there the first day.
Because fresh food's not just fresh food, and it's there's so
unbelievable.
much about like
Quantity
the
that he's
practice and the
producing.
soil quality. Like I think
Yeah.
like one of the things that I love from that regenerative ag space, and it's one of the big sayings that like if you're a terrestrial based farmer, no matter what you're growing, you're a soil farmer first and foremost.
Soil farmer.
Yeah, like
I am.
if you're raising beef, if you're growing wheat, if you're doing any of that, first and foremost, you are a soil farmer. And if you don't have that microbial life, that carbon content, that mineral base, that organic matter, then you're growing nothing. And you're probably using the soil as a substrate for chemical agriculture, where the soil's just like this dead, inert thing that just holds the root system, and you just pour chemicals on top of it to grow stuff. But something that really got me down south, and like in the 2 Tilba communities, Central Tilba and Tilba, they've got like the old kind of, settlers cemetery down one of the beaches. And I was like, it's a good fishing spot. You can get a wave there every now and then when the bank's right. And kind of went in and had like a walk through this little cemetery. And I'm like walking around, I'm like looking around, I'm like, these people are dying in the early 1900s and they were all in their 90s. And so this place was totally unsupported by road. Like it was, you had to drive up to the Monero and like horse up to, to Goulburn to get to Sydney, but pretty much supported only by the sea and the Port of Bermagui. And like they were living into their 90s, and
No fancy hospitals.
no fancy hospitals, no nothing, like just diet and movement. Really, but they were on this amazing volcanic soil, the mountains full of spring water, so they're drinking this kind of mineral-rich spring water as their primary water source. They're eating food that's grown out of like this deep, rich volcanic soil, and as a result, they're living to a bloody long age.
Yeah.
Like in an age where like medical intervention was like, oh, I don't know, why don't you try putting a hot nail in his head? That might fix him. Oh, well, he's dead. Okay, and into the morgue. So I was like, wow, that really kind of struck me about that power of food for longevity. Where like if you can kind of get your diet on point and you can strip the chemicals away and you can make sure you're eating high quality nutrient dense food and you're kind of living like a natural, active, outdoor human lifestyle. Because like these guys weren't weren't retiring at 65 and playing golf. They were like farming till they were 95.
Yeah.
They were
Sprinting
growing
up
their own
hills.
food. Yeah, exactly. Sprinting up hills. And like that kind of diet, that nutrient dense diet gives you that vitality to be able to do it. Like, we all know 65-year-old men and women that like at 65, they're shells, they're done. Like it's like long descent into death.
It's like the most, that's the most precarious time of human's life is the first year of retirement.
Yeah. So
When you
because
get
of the
real
mind.
sick.
Yeah.
You lose your sense of worth,
Yes.
and you're not you're no longer contributing back to the community in a way.
And I reckon if you want to meet the most vital and robust group of like octogenarians, go and join your local garden club.
Yeah.
Because like, in my kind of work, I get asked to come and speak to, like the old garden clubs every now and then, and there'll be a bunch of like 80-year-old, mostly women, occasional bloke, and they just on it. they're all spry and they're like moving and they've got like, they've got
Good squat patterns.
Good, yeah, they've got like a full,
Resting
full
squat.
spread. They're like engaged. They're asking like interesting questions. Like all of them have like a great deal of physical capability.
Still sharp.
Still sharp, physically sharp and mentally sharp. And it's because when they're not, at these social gatherings, they're at home in the garden. They're bending down, they're planting stuff, they're lifting little 20 kilo bags of potting mix or
Eating well.
they're eating well, and I was like that. So the two experiences of talking to garden clubs and seeing that cemetery for me were like two things where I'm like, I want to have a long life, but I want to have like a long, capable life.
Yeah, quality.
Quality. Yeah. I don't want to be like, spending the final 15 years of my life in palliative care, just like looking out a window waiting to die.
There's something. I was thinking about that when I was spending time with Jeff, and I'm thinking like this.
First name basis.
Yeah.
Me and Jeff go way back. And actually, my daughter came up to me the next day when he was like out in the garden. I was like walking over to him, and she goes, "Dad, there's your man crush. Your man crush, Dad. He's over there." And I'm like,
Busted. Don't embarrass me in front of
There's
Jeff, honey.
Your man crush. Hi, Jeff is I'm like, your man crush. I'm like, no, stop. But I think we're constantly looking for new information and ways to better ourselves, and the personal development thing it's huge especially for business owner or anyone that wants to get somewhere in life. And we tend to overlook the fact that there's so many of us that have already been there, done it, come out the other end, whether they were successful or not, doesn't really matter. Like there's experienced individuals on this planet, and there are elders, and for millennia we would go to them for advice. Like, okay, you're in a bad place, however, you fucked up. What did you do so I don't have to go down that path? Or maybe they had a successful life and you learn from that as well.
Yeah.
But we've cut that line short.
Yep.
We've done that, and we've cut it from our kids as well, because we chuck them in homes like our parents, and we go and visit them while they slowly deteriorate and lose their sense of worth.
Yes.
And our kids see this empty shell of what could have been the most, one of the strongest sources of knowledge for them.
Yes.
For the most important periods of their growth and development.
And with that patience and time as a grandparent to be able to sit down with kids and really explain stuff to them, and like, because I've got two kids, but I'm in my mid-30s. I've got stuff going on. Like I spend as much time as humanly possible with them, and I love that and cherish that time. But I still got to put a roof over our head.
Yeah, and that time, even with them physically, it's very difficult to spend with them like in the present, because you're
managing,
beeping,
Yeah.
you're thinking about what you need to do next. Okay, I've got half an hour here with them, and
they're so sharp to that. Kids,
yeah.
like if you're not present, like if you're kind of like on the phone, like whether it be like for work purposes or just like kind of mindlessly scrolling because you just think you're just all chilling playing toys, they're razor sharp on that. They know you're not there, and they call you out on it. It's so that's been like a good kind of back and forth with our kids, like that I've encouraged them. Like if I'm looking at my phone, just tell me to put it down, and I will. No worries. Like if you want me, like come and get. Like I'm here for you.
Yeah.
So yeah.
One of the interesting things that we spoke about yesterday, and that you talking about your mate Jeff, is old mate,
Best mate.
Jeff, thanks for listening, by the way. Hopefully it's not your first episode. Is the connection between like training, like movement, right? And you talk about like a movement practice, which is a concept. And this is me as an outsider. I'm not much in this world that you guys are talking about, but I think we end up where people get very much into their world and often don't look at other ones. So say someone who's in the kind of permy food kind of scene are not necessarily also in the movement scene.
Yes.
Right? And people that are in the movement scene are in the movement scene.
Yes.
Maybe they're into black coffee and grass-fed beef, but only because it's dictated by that subculture.
Yes.
So it's interesting to me that there is this crossover.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit on that?
Well, I think they all just jigsaw perfectly together. That if you're looking at a traditional human existence or an ancestral, pre-agricultural or even early stages of agriculture, before we became a highly industrialized society, that those things were all indistinguishable. Like your movement practice was your food growing practice. Your cultural experience was both of those things combined. Your family time was those things combined. Your sense of worth and the things that you worked to were your movement practice and your food growing practice. And the way that you connected to your family was the food that you cooked, that you moved to grow. So it was all this one giant, holistic picture that we could not separate ourselves from. And now, as we've mechanized and industrialized and found all these little ways to kind of carve off those roles and outsource them, and so we can specialize. We've become increasingly less the kind of capable generalist and more the specialist. And now, because of that specialized nature of the work that we do in our modern society, we tend to view things as niches that we do, like, oh, I cook, or I grow, like I'm a gardener, or I'm a foodie, or I'm like a gym bro, or like I like movement and stuff like that. And maybe like I throw my hat in the ring on one of those things, and the other ones, as you kind of mentioned, are peripheral or dictated by the culture within that group. But they segue so or connect so beautifully. And I think I love Katie Bowman for that. It's again. So if you're listening out, she's a US biomechanist, and she's super onto it. And she's all about varied movement patterns and kind of getting that full. She used this term rainbow movements, and it's the polar opposite of an isolated movement. If you do an isolated movement, your body adapts to an isolated movement. If you do a high variety of movements, your body is nourished by that variety of movement, and it adapts to being able to move in a variety of planes. But she is 100% into permaculture as well, and food growing, because she sees that within that, you're doing all these fundamental human movement patterns. You're deadlifting things off the ground, you're carrying loads, you're squatting, you're lunging, you're reaching overhead, you're pulling yourself up to look over things. There's so much movement and variety within that all of a sudden you don't have to carve off these individual periods of your day or your life to focus on my food growing, and then I've got my movement practice, and then I spend the time in the kitchen. That you can stack them to be one thing, that you don't have to isolate them. So whenever I'm in the garden, I really try to super concentrate on form. If I'm picking, or if I'm out cutting wood, we live in a relatively cold environment down there, and I probably cut 2 tons of firewood a year that I have to move. I go out, I cut it in the bush, I load it into a trailer in blocks, I stack it at my house, I bring it in inside to burn. And every time I do that, I make sure I keep a nice neutral spine, and I'm bending down to the ground, and I consider that as a job that I need to do, but also as a way to kind of get my quality movement practice in as well. So yeah, I think we don't need to isolate these things, and that those 3 concepts of food, growing it, cooking it, and movement, and the physical nourishment of the human body. Those 3 things are really one process, or can be morphed into one process. And when you do all 3 together, all 3 benefit. It's like a 3-legged table. You can get the IKEA flat pack and you got 3 legs. Sure, you got a leg in each hand, but when you put them all together, it's capable of bearing a much stronger weight. I just made that metaphor up. I don't know if that didn't land right, but I'm just freestyling here. I had that second cup of coffee there, so I don't know if it's the cream or the caffeine, but so yeah, and you get that benefit, where when you're eating your own nutrient dense food that you've grown, all of a sudden your recovery time's better. Your tendons are stronger, your muscle growth is more high quality, and you don't need to supplement. You can get it all from this relatively holistic but closed circle of activities.
Yeah, I have an answer to that question too. So I saw when I first met Jeff, he introduced me to his wife, and she's 25 years younger than him. Highly educated, very pretty. And I just thought, I want to be like that.
Yeah.
What a boss.
Yeah. Yep. Is there this vitality?
Hey, D. That's cool though. Great. But were you surprised to see he had a pair of rings, and what do you say, rings and a barbell?
Yeah, rings, barbell, surfs.
I guess it's it's not that uncommon for someone to have a pair of rings, but out on a rural property, it's pretty cool.
Yeah,
seems pretty progressive.
Yes, and he's doing online train. He's doing a bit of online stuff for some. He likes trying lots of different styles of training. He's like a bit of a like online training slut.
Right.
Yes.
They do a bit of this, bit of that, and he's always trying new ways. And he doesn't really feel the necessity to stick to one style of training and get really good at it. He just wants to move.
Yep.
He likes to surf, so whatever keeps him in the water
Yep.
and feeling strong in the water, then he'll do.
And
he loves all the body weight stuff though. So
And I can imagine like running that farm like that. He's not exactly like he's in a movement deficit.
no,
Like
no,
I don't
every
know what
morning
his
he's
like
up.
step counter would be up, but it'd probably be more like 20,000 every day. Than
Yeah,
like,
well,
it'd be good if you get 10, Jeff. It's like I hit 40 on a daily basis.
Yeah. We
love
got a
it.
knock on the tent. I think it was about 5:30.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, because he said, oh, you kids want to
Morning.
feed the animals tomorrow? And I was like, yeah.
Yeah, at
Knock on
9.
the tent. Yeah. I was like, oh my God, it's still dark outside.
Get up, kids.
Morning.
Fuck out of here.
My kids are like slowly sleeping deeper into the sleeping bag. And I'm like, quick, get up. Come on.
Go
let's
feed the animals with your man crush, Dad.
Yeah, it's that time.
We'll do it at lunch.
Yeah, so we actually did a little walk. We did fed the horses, fed the hens and stuff, and then there was some, I don't know, it was like a rodent of some kind that was spreading a tick.
Oh.
And had to be flushed out of the drain pipe. And he looked at me and he goes, "Is your son okay with like a bit of blood?" And I was like, I asked my son, and I'm like, oh, I hope he says no, because I'm terrible watching things get killed. And he's like, yeah.
Damn.
Pushed him out. They get the dog on one side of his pipe, and he's pushing out the whatever it was with a stick to get this rodent out of the pipe, and it finally bolts out the pipe, and I'm like, go, you good rat. He's free, and this dog just like, the dog's name's Possum, just grabs this thing and just goes, I just chucked it on the ground, and this little like, a marsupial-y looking rodent thing just kind of lies on its back, and it's just going. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm totally scarred. And I look down my son, I'm thinking, thinking that he's going to be like freaking out. He's just kind of like, just that inquisitive kind of, just looking. And I'm like, you okay with this? And he's like, yeah.
I think kids are cooler with death than adults. I think like they're like, to them, like we're kind of socially conditioned to be like, oh, it's scary. It's this big thing. Like, whereas kids don't have that. It's like more of a, as you said, fascination type thing. They're like, oh, wow. So it's like, it's not asleep. Like it's dead. Like it's never going to be alive again. And they, because like, like I said, I took my kids to the rooster kill, and they weren't like, oh no, that's too heavy. They're like, okay.
Yeah.
I think I understand this.
Yeah, and that kind of mirror as well. I mean, if everyone was freaking out, they'd probably freak out as well.
Totally.
But yeah, it was a bit of a eye opener for me. I was like, oh damn, we've got to kill stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not good at killing. I don't think I'd be good at killing things.
Yeah.
I mean,
my kind of
maybe
like
they're
off the wall idea is that like if you want to eat meat, there should be like a licensing process.
Yeah, you got to
and you should like have to, you not necessarily like pull the trigger, but like witness it.
Yeah,
And you go like, well, because you're outsourcing that somewhere. Someone somewhere is pulling the trigger on the meat that you eat. And like that poor dude does it, or like, a woman does it like 8 hours a day every day. That's a grim job, and not like
I hate to do that for a job.
Oh man, oh no,
You're a tough gig.
Bolting in the head.
And then we almost kind of criticize that type of person.
Yeah.
Like you drive through a country town, meet a weird dude. I bet he works at the abattoir. Creep. Let's get a hot dog.
Yeah, and because most people I found like are in that kind of boat, like they're happy to eat meat, but like oh yeah, I don't know, like you're not alone in that tea for sure. Because I mean, like doing it on television with River Cottage, like when it came out on DVD, I saw an animal classification on there that I'd never seen before, and it was mild animal slaughter themes. Wow. Strong language, sexual, sex scenes, and mild animal slaughter themes.
Did you get any like trolling after the back of that?
A little bit, but actually, but not too much.
Yeah.
Like I think the biggest thing I got trolled on for that was double dipping, like in tasting a dish that I then served to the CWA ladies. They came over and like made this like pumpkin risotto and like tasted it once. Needs more salt, bit of salt, and then ate again. And it was like. The phone line lit up.
That is
They're like,
great.
how could you? You double dipped and then you fed it to the CWA, you savage. But like when it came to the animal killing, actually surprisingly, I was like, here we go.
Yeah.
Like I'm getting the target on the back for this one. Because the vegan community is a very
People throwing buckets of blood on you on the street.
has elements of it that are very outspoken, which is fine. And I thought I'm probably going to make myself a bit of a target for this, but I was actually really surprised that I had a lot of vegans like identify themselves as vegans to me through social media and then go, thank you for putting this on TV. thank you for putting this on like national, primetime television, because like it's making people uncomfortable. And like, that's what we're talking about. Like, this is what's happening to animals to eat your meat. Like, and so they kind of felt like it was a tool in their kit to go like, well, if that makes you feel uncomfortable, then what are you eating meat for? Like, you should be coming over to the vegan side. But the flip side of that was also that I got lots of like families, like parents of young kids, kind of get in touch and go, thanks for showing that, because like that's how we've had a conversation around meat consumption with our children. Because it's a lifestyle program. It's not a Tarantino film. Like, it's all kind of artfully done. Like, you see it happen on camera, but not like graphically. And they're like, well, we're not going to go out to the mega abattoir at Picton and rock up at the signing desk and go, just want to have a conversation with my kids around meat eating. Can we go to the kill floor, please? I think I want to show them how it's done. But apparently, like, lots of families watched it together and had the conversation around the ethics of meat eating with their children after watching me kill livestock on national television.
That's cool.
Which was, that was
So
great.
cool.
Yeah, that I was really chuffed with that, to be able to foster that conversation with people and help families have a discussion around like their own ethics. And, some kids, I've heard like kids becoming vegetarian from that, which is totally cool as well. Like, they had the conversation, they weighed up the ethics themselves, and they went, you know what, like, if that's where chicken comes from, like, I don't want to eat chicken anymore. And I was like, well, good on you, kid. That's great. Yeah. Like, it's good on you for having that conversation and then, using that information to make a decision.
I did a beginner's bow hunting retreat some years ago, which was like just like an intro thing with a couple of guys. It was sort of, what did we do? We did it's a weekend, and we spent the first evening kind of getting a lesson on different parts of bow hunting, the ethics of it.
Yes.
The equipment, the etiquette. Yeah, it was really good.
And with the ethics, like, if you don't have a clean shot, don't take it.
Exactly.
Kind of thing. Like,
all of that stuff. Like, you're a steward of the land, and it's, and like you were saying before, to a vegan or a vegetarian hearing it, it sounds a bit kind of, it sounds ridiculous.
Yeah.
But it's about having respect for the animals and understanding that you are going to eat it and you're only there to take what you need.
Yes.
And that, you want to kill the weakest one.
Yeah.
If there's a pack, you're going to choose the one that's got the least chance of reproducing and
absolutely
all those things. And then you go out and you don't do anything. You just help you just help kind of sight it, and then they will kill it. And then you get to learn to butcher it and stuff. And it was really cool. They killed a deer.
Great.
It was mad. It was the maddest thing. But so many people that I tell about it are like, "Oh, that's fucked." Like,
you did that like voluntarily on your
like,
weekend.
You're a creep. Worse than that guy in the abattoir,
Yeah.
And you're like, and people, who know better, and you're like, dude, you fucking eat meat. Like, like, how is your instinct that is fucked? Because someone has to kill it.
And wild meat is the pinnacle of like the ethics of meat eating. Like, some people would say that no meat eating is ethical whatsoever, but like an animal that has had no interaction with humanity whatsoever and is just like kind of walking around the bush and eating some grass, and then all of a sudden is killed instantly by a clean shot. Like, that's as good as it gets. Like, they've had no stress put onto them by contact with humanity. They've lived their whole life. There's been a degree of natural selection because, as you said, you're not going for the alpha males or pregnant females. You're kind of thinning the gene pool of weaker stock, and so the herd benefits. You get nourishment and sustenance from wild meat, and you get to spend that time with reverence in nature. Because you have to be, especially bow hunting, like, you've got to be so mindful. It's not like you sit 300 meters away with a high-powered rifle and go, just put it in the scope, pull the trigger. Like, you've got to get really close, and to be able to have that body control and that environmental awareness of wind and direction and topography and your own body positioning and what the animal's doing. Like, you're connecting to nature and like. Because we kind of, as people, when we connect to nature these days, like, this is what it was like for us when we were living in Melbourne for the last couple of years before we moved back to the South Coast. We're like, okay, we want to go out. We want to get some time in nature. We're sick of the built environment. We'd go out to a national park, park in the car park, get out of the car, walk on, like, I had little kids, so you do a little half-hour circuit loop somewhere. You're just walking on the track. Like, you're walking on like a flat, gravel track, and you're kind of like walking almost through this like human tunnel through nature. Like, you're not connecting with it in any way. You're looking at it, it's cool, it's nice, you're breathing the fresh air, that's great. But that's the depth of your connection to it. You're a tourist there, you know. It's
Yeah.
so, but to be able to do that and like to have that hyper awareness in that natural environment and like and of all those layers of all the different bits that go into making a successful hunt, like you're deeply connecting to that. I mean, there's layers way beyond that. If you go back to traditional societies, you know, where like you're literally living in the same environment as that animal, like you share the home with that animal. But compared to our kind of domesticated city lifestyles, that's like a hunting experience is one of the deepest ways that we can connect with nature there is.
Yeah, I loved it. I coming back from I sort of formed that opinion that everyone, like you said, everyone who eats meat should benefit from such an experience.
Yeah.
And obviously it's not an easy thing for people to do, but it would be awesome if you could somehow get, you know, send your kids, they get a weekend kind of camp and they get to sort of experience that.
Yep.
You know, or something along those lines.
Well, if there's any JB podcast listeners out there, we'll bring you down to the Coolaga Light Rooster Kill next year if you want to connect with that. Like, if,
Dude, that would be cool.
Serious. Like, I mean, if there's any kind of tribe members out there that want to, you know, that have kids or they themselves want to do it, maybe not like in a hunt context, but more in an agricultural context, like let the boys know, they'll let me know. Come down to the South Coast and we'll walk you through it.
I'll come next year.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, I'll bring the fam.
Yeah,
great.
Yeah.
Fucking
Get on
awesome.
down. Let's invite Jeff as well. Why not? Yeah, okay, Jeff.
Bring the rings, mate. Bring the rings.
Bring the rings. They had 110 ducks that they did a big cull of.
Yep.
So his freezer was full of ducks.
Oh, it's so good. Duck
What a
fat.
problem to have.
Big chubby ducks.
Yeah.
They look
man.
delicious.
Like the best a hot chip can get is a hot chip that's been deep fried in duck fat. And like that's to the point, you
That
know.
would have been at the French restaurant that you started
Totally.
in.
Yeah, we had like one special little fryer, you know, just for doing the potatoes in duck fat, you know, and it's and you know, people are like, oh wow, like duck fat's so rich, but it's like, you know, saturated animal-based fats, high quality, you know, like anything in moderation are actually really good for us. Hydrogenated vegetable oils, which are most fries done in, are really shit for us. So like you can eat deep fried potatoes in duck fat on occasion and actually have it be quite nourishing for you, you know. It's as long as that's not your 3 meals a day. But if you're like smashing like takeaway food from the local fish and chip shop with oxidized oil and hydrogenated vegetable oil, like that's toxin for your body, you know.
Locking you up.
Yeah, and it's inflaming yourself. It's like there's neurotoxic chemicals to like properties to it. So yeah, like high quality animal fats, like they've kind of been demonized. But that's why I like to bring up, you know, the cream like this for you guys. Like it's so thick. It's, you know, I used to turn it into butter, and like to make cream into butter, you kind of just whisk it or mix it until it's an emulsion. It splits like that. You like kind of look at it sideways and it turns to butter. Like that's 99%
Yeah,
fat.
in my coffee, it looked like butter.
Yeah.
You
Like
can
it's
whisk
so
that?
close. Or you can beat it, and then like after 2 seconds, it splits.
Right.
So it like, and that's why you know,
And it splits into what?
milk solids or,
Yep.
or whey,
Yep.
and fat or
Okay.
ghee. You know,
Yep.
it's like just pure dairy fat. But that's, you know, that's as good as it gets. And then couple that with some of the oysters. I remember hearing like at the beginning of the kind of COVID lockdown, seeing this article by Dan Barber, who's like a very prominent chef and opinionist in the US, and he kind of went into the archives of the New York Times and found that, you know, like because toilet paper stockpiling was a thing for this pandemic, which is, you know, it's happening again during the second wave. It's happening again. I went into like to my
strange.
local supermarket and just like gave the big forehead slap. I'm like, not again. Come on. Like, what is wrong with people? Oh, but in the Spanish flu pandemic in the early 1900s, the thing that was stockpiled was oysters because of their contribution, because of the high zinc and trace mineral content to people's immune systems.
Holy shit.
So like it was so bad that people were like cleaning out oyster leases, stealing them, you know, like going out in like little canoes and like cleaning them out. So they had to build like these brick watchtowers on oyster leases. So yeah, that was the red hot item in the early 1900s, oysters for your immunity to survive the Spanish flu, which has been one of these kind of crazy things that like has not been addressed. I feel like in this pandemic, it's like it's reactionary, like it's our which I totally understand at a societal scale, like we need to take certain measures. I'm not like one of these like crazy conspiracy theories, like coronavirus isn't even a real thing. It's just like a control mechanism.
That's the soundbite that I'm going to use for
Yeah,
the
please do.
promo.
Yeah. Paul West, prominent conspiracy theorist, joins us on the Jungle Brothers.
Protege, Pete Evans.
Oh, God. Pete and Paul. We're bringing our non-expert Mary in on this conversation. But not looking at that why aren't we educating people to have robust health?
Fuck.
You know, why isn't this focus going?
Because we're so privileged, aren't we? That it's and it's ridiculous that we're not.
Yeah.
But then it's also like, fuck, we don't realize how easy we've got it that we don't even have to talk about that.
Yeah.
You know, and that people can still maintain a shit diet and a lack of training and whatever.
Yeah.
And still survive this thing.
Yeah. That's it's true. You know, it's that we've, you know, that we can kind of just make do, like surviving but not thriving.
Yeah.
And we're propped up by, you know, modern medicine and like the comforts of our society. But I don't know, my focus has really shifted onto like thriving.
Yeah, you need that exposure.
Yeah, exactly. Like when for our kids, we just got them out in the garden every day. Like get dirty, kids. Like cover your hands in soil and dirt and roll around in it. Like we're so paranoid of exposure to pathogens and germs, but really like we're covered in them, you know, and that's a good thing. Yeah, we're made of them. Yeah, exactly. There's like
jiu-jitsu, man. It's the exchange.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, some great social distancing going on the mats.
Man, so you got a question?
No, after you.
I wanted to ask about your book.
Oh.
Edible Garden Cookbook.
That's the one.
Is there like, you know, like what a fucking awesome topic. I'm guessing you talk about how people can produce food, and then how they can turn that into quality food for the family.
Correct.
Is there like a couple of sort of key concepts there that are that your strong takeaways on it?
Yep. So I wrote that book in response to people watching River Cottage, which was set on a 20-acre farm in rural Australia, going, man, Paul, we love the show. It's so good, but like we live in suburbia. We live in an apartment, you know, like it's a dream of ours, but like one day. I was like, you know what? Like 90% of Australia live in the urban environment. Like we've got this kind of like, you know, sense that we've got connection to the country and bush, but really we're one of the most urbanized societies on the planet. So I was like, you know what? Like I'm going to write a book about doing it in people's backyards to go like, you can do this. You can do all the things that I'm doing here on a farm in River Cottage. I mean, in principle, you can't keep pigs or a dairy cow in an apartment in Bondi, but you can still connect in some way to food production and to the food that you eat and your community through food. So I guess the key kind of things would be one, cook, like just cook. Like that's the starting point for me, because like why would you grow your own food if you didn't know how to cook it, you know? And because if you cook, you'll start cooking with like supermarket produce, you know, you'll be like, wow, I made this from scratch, and you'll have this baseline of flavor. And then if you bring in like growing your own food, all of a sudden you'll have the cooking skills, and then you'll be like, you grew your own herbs, or you might grow your own tomatoes and go, whoa, I'm cooking from scratch, but it's like, this is like a totally different thing now. Like this tastes even better. And I've got this like ownership of it. Like there's, I like to talk about like the 6 flavor, which is, you know, I don't even know what the other ones are, like sour, sweet, salty, and umami. The 5 kind of flavors. And the 6th one to me is smugness. And that's like, if you grow something yourself, like there's a flavor to it that just like when you're eating it, and it's so powerful. Like even if you like, you know, just grow like a little pot of herbs, a little pot of parsley on your kitchen windowsill or at your back door. If you make like spaghetti bolognese or something like that, and you just like, you bought everything else from the shop, but then right at the last minute, you go out and pick that little bit of parsley that you grew yourself, chop it up, sprinkle it on the top. Like the smugness flavor is so powerful. It's like you grew everything in that dish. It's like you raised the beef, you dug the clay and turned it into the bowl and fired it into ceramics. You know, you whittled the spoon, the fork, and you have that connection to food. And this is like another kind of crazy rabbit hole, but like I'll just touch on it briefly, is that when you have that connection to it and that ownership of it, you're actually kind of very psychologically open to receiving the nutrition of it. And our mental approach, or how our brain perceives the food that we're putting in our bodies, actually has a very profound physiological effect. And so that's why I've kind of like accredited like cultural grace too, like people saying grace at the beginning of a meal, because it makes you open and appreciative. And we're now, but in our kind of like crazy diet culture, we're not appreciating food, we're demonizing certain things of food, like sugar's bad, fat's bad, carbs are bad, grains are bad. And so inevitably when you do fall off the bandwagon for that, like those very restrictive diets, and you go and you're like, oh, on a paleo diet, and you smash like a slice of pizza, you go, oh, it did make me really sick. Because as you're eating it, you're going, oh, this is bad for me.
I'm going to feel terrible.
I'm going to feel terrible. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So when you connect and grow it yourself, like you're so much more open to receiving that nutrition, which sounds a bit woo-woo, but there's actually some legit science behind that, like our psychological approach to the food that we eat. So it's not just like a crazy Christian thing, like saying, you know, like grace before meals. It's actually like there is some neurological science behind the benefit for that. But like that's probably a separate conversation.
That's a sustainable way of eating as well.
Yeah.
Like even when you demonize food groups and you restrict yourself to, you know, a restricted diet. I mean, even paleo.
Yeah.
Because you've got that restriction, the stuff you eat, you end up fucking disliking anyway because that's all you got.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And then
steak and greens
restrict it
again.
to the way you can prepare it, and then you do your 5 meals for that day, and then I see it all the time. These posts of like
Meal prep.
meal prep, and I'm like,
How can
imagine
you do that?
day 7 of that fucking same chicken with beans, and it all looks nice and fresh and yummy, and you're like, imagine day 6 or day 7 of that.
Got to hit them macros.
son.
Oh yeah,
Same meal every day.
I'm repulsed
5
by
days.
that when I see that on Instagram. Like, they're like, man, you
Irritates
poor
the shit out of
person,
me.
you know. And but it's like anything as well. It's like when you have that narrow window of what you eat, like you don't benefit from it. Like it's like our diet's so much more complicated than like carbohydrate, fat, and protein. It's like in movement or any sort of physical practice. Like if you just you can get like really good doing deadlifts, just doing deadlifts. But then like if you try to do a pull-up or try to sprint or do something else, like that's not what you've been training for, and you're probably going to like injure yourself because all you do is deadlifts.
Or even deadlifting with someone else. I mean, if you're meal prepping like that, you just ostracize yourself from everyone around you. Like you can't go out to dinner and hang out with people. You're going to have lunch, and you pull out your little thing and everyone's sharing meals, and you're like, that's in itself has very negative effects on health, you know, especially psychological health.
Which is all good if you're like a 20-year-old bachelor gym bro, you know. But like if you've got a family and the kid's like, I want spaghetti bolagnese to do, I'm like, oh, spaghetti bolagnese is not quite where I'm at nutritionally right now. Like, I don't want to eat that. Yeah.
How do kids feel about zoodles? Yeah.
Calm down, kids. There's zoodles for everyone. Don't worry. More the merrier. But to go back to your original question, Joey, it's if 2 things would be to like just have a crack, like start cooking. It's not hard. Like we kind of like overcomplicate it, especially in the social media age. And you kind of touched on this a bit earlier, T, like where it's like, it's about how it tastes, not how it looks, you know, and like we see all these like extravagant, crazy dishes through food influencers on Instagram. But like really like one of the best things you can eat is like a brown beef stew. Like that's, that's like comfort food plus, you know, and it's like incredibly nutrient dense. But, you know, you put like a bowl of like brown stew, you know, a spoon of brown stew in a bowl and put it on Instagram. People are like, what's that, dog food? Like, what's that shit? Like, that's not getting any likes. Like, that's stew, gross. And so we kind of have elevated like chefs and food influencers onto this pedestal where only master chefs and like professional chefs can cook. Whereas really like preparing very simple food, like it doesn't need special twists. It doesn't need 10 ingredients. Like if you get the bare bones basics, it's so easy. And if you're like wanting to start but you're not sure where, like I'd say get a slow cooker and let it do the work for you. I think that was like the first thing I actually commented on a JB post. I'd been following you guys for a while, and I saw like you put a picture of a slow cooker up or something.
No,
like
I put
that?
a post up that was like nutrition tip, and it was like, if you saw, I can't remember. It was like, get yourself a slow cooker.
Yeah.
You can't fuck
I was
it up.
like,
2 to 3
these
ingredients.
guys, no. I'm like preaching to the converted. I was like, I put mine on a pedestal and lay floral wreaths around it, and it's just like steaming 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because you don't have to do much. And like for me, that slow cookery is the real alchemy of cookery, where you can just take some like gnarly root vegetables and a bit of liquid and some like gristly meat and chuck it in this thing, go to work, come home, and it's just like your house is full of this delicious aroma, and you're in this like lip smacking deliciousness for your dinner. So
I went the other route.
ooh, Thermomix.
No. The other side of the spectrum.
Oh.
It's a clay egg You know, the clay egg.
Oh,
You
yeah.
got to do the charcoal.
Oh,
and
beautiful.
Fucking hell, you can't walk away from that thing ever.
Yeah. Baby
You got to
sit.
sit on it for 6 hours. It's killer. And then you might bring something out that tastes good. Although I'm getting better at it.
Yeah.
It has taught me how to like cook slowly, like properly.
Yes.
But fuck, it's been a love-hate relationship. There's
That's
been
a whole-
times
You're
I
not
wanna
doing
take a
7
baseball
days
bat.
worth of food prep with that thing.
I have like literally turned beef ribs into like a carbonized shell. It looked like, I opened it up.
It's like
and I was like,
Terminator 2 Judgment Day.
yeah, it was like, yes. Yeah. Just white bone and like like a black like framework of like fibers. But the bottom was just this white, pure white fat.
Oh.
And I was like, I'm going to fucking use every last bit of that.
Yeah. I made this. I made this,
Poured it in a
goddammit.
little jar. It was smoked. And I was like, okay, the fat's good. The fat's good. But yeah, that was that I'm working on this thing, and it's a real challenge.
It's a whole
but
new
it's
art.
Great.
You know,
Yeah.
like any sort of like
Starting to love
fire cookery. It's kind of like
Smoking
going from
and
like buying
trying
stuff
stuff
off
out.
the shelf to hunting for venison. Like you've got to be so engaged in it. You know,
Yeah.
like you can't just set and forget it or like turn a dial on the oven. Like you've got to like
You got to
driving that sucker. You know,
constantly tinkering. I do like tinkering. Right?
It was like the time we, for our Christmas party, we're like, what are we going to cook? And we're like, fuck it, let's get some pigs on spits.
Yeah.
So we got 3 spits and 3 pigs, or 2 pigs and a lamb. And then we're like, all right, what do we need? I guess we need some fucking charcoal and whatever. And then
Crash course.
luckily my brother turned
All
up.
in.
Alan. We had Alan, Big Al.
Big
Mikulowski,
Al.
Yeah.
who's what's he got, like a Macedonian background? So he's like,
he
I've
knows
seen
how
my
to cook
uncles
the
do this
pig.
shit before. Yeah, so he's like, I'll give it a crack. And then he's like, I got to go. And then we're like, Abe, my brother, like sort it out. And he's like trying to figure out how much fucking coals. And man, it was so hard.
Yeah.
Right? And there's like 120 people at the party. Like, when do we
When's
get
the
to eat
pig going to be
pig?
ready?
Yeah. He's sweating. But
we were burnt it. We burnt it at first.
Yeah.
And then we had to pull the charcoal out. Oh, sorry,
we had it packed
embers.
full of hot coals. didn't we?
Yeah.
And then we put that on the concrete. Like, okay, it's good now. We'll just sit that over there. And then it must have been heating up like air pockets in the concrete. And the concrete started exploding and sending shards
This is
of
going well.
hot embers into the
JB
party.
Christmas
And people
party.
were like, oh my God.
Yeah. Luckily,
And we're
everyone's
like,
fucking
oh, shit.
smashed.
So it was like a war zone.
That's one of those pizzas.
Man.
But it turned out all right in the end.
It did. It did. They
You
nailed
always
it.
get there in the end.
Well, by the time that was ready, everyone was starving. So
But it's true. Like, I mean, even you would have, I remember your original stories from when you got your clay egg. You were just like ruining things.
Yeah.
And then now you've had some great successes.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what you're saying, isn't it? Like, even if you start cooking with simple ingredients that you can get from the supermarket,
Yep.
with the fucking gas or electric stove you have at home, which is simple to use.
Yep.
But as you go through this process, you learn.
Yeah.
And you can gradually step up the complexity.
And don't beat yourself up. You
Yeah.
know, like that watching like reality TV cooking programs conditions us to think that when we create or cook something in the kitchen that is then going to be judged by a panel of experts. You know, like oh, I just made this thing for dinner, but what would the MasterChef judges think of it? Who gives a toss?
Yeah.
You know, it's like if my kids
Guy's
say,
overweight.
Yeah, stuff you made. You know, it's like if my kids put food on the table, they go, I don't like this, and I go, that's dinner. You know, I don't care what you like, you know, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. Like, this is what we're eating tonight. Like, there's this expectation that as a home cook, cooking for a family, that we need to be like cooking restaurant dishes, like these layered, like multi-component, you know, like the kind of thing you'd want to eat when you eat out. But like the meat and 3 veg thing, you know, it's like, oh, meat and 3 veg, so traditional, so classic. Like, it works, you know,
delicious.
and it's delicious, you know, and it's nutritious and it's relatively straightforward to prepare, you know, like you don't have to reinvent the wheel. We've kind of had this explosion of home food culture where all of a sudden, you know, we're looking at the, you know, traditions in our, you know, of like meat and 3 veg as being really passe and boring and these things, and then we're trying to like try to take on all these different cuisines and all this different style of cookery, but you're making a rod for your own back. Keep it simple. Like, it's not going to be judged. It's not a restaurant meal. Your kids aren't paying clients. They're your kids, you know. They're just going to eat what you put in front of them.
and it's an art.
It's an art. Yeah, totally. And it's
Got a whole lifetime to master it.
Yeah, you do it.
That's right. 3 times a day,
Exactly.
every day, forever.
Which is one of the, for me, having been someone that did like my chef's trade, I'm eternally grateful for that because it's like a trade that I can practice 3 times a day. You know, it's like if you're a builder, you build your house once, you know, and your family lives in it. But like I get to feed my kids, like, and I get to take control of their nutrition as best I can. I mean, they still eat, you know, fish and chips from the takeaway shop every now and then, and barbecue sauce and calamari and pizza, as Bowie likes to tell me. But, you know, I can make things from scratch, you know, and it's not complicated to me. And like I can prepare dinner for my family, and it's not something that I stress out about or have to worry about. And I can see that, you know, is helping nourish them and thrive. So I love it.
So your dad was he horticulturalist? Still is?
Yeah.
Well, he is a horticulturalist.
Yeah.
He's own a nursery.
Yep.
Joe's been fighting the urge of gardening for a while, but he has planted his first.
Scarred.
Too busy getting big. Bashing fools on the mats. No, go on.
He planted his first passion fruit vine the other day. So
Nice.
I heard, if you had advice for him and he's got a veggie patch going now.
Yes.
Got a veg patch going.
What advice would you give to a first time gardener?
I would say start small and start easy. Like we kind of live in this this backyard blitz culture where you sit down.
You want to be Jamie Jury.
You want to be Jamie Jury.
I'm doing the jacked bit.
Yeah.
Right.
Now
I
you
just-
just got to do the garden bit, like and the manpower bit, like the Velcro sided pants. Like every gardener should have a pair. But like we kind of have this, you know, you sit down and yourself or your partner, you go, yeah, we're going to start a veggie garden. Sick. We've never done it before, so we're going to go to Bunnings. We're going to buy $2,000 worth of stuff. Like we're going to go mad for this weekend. We're going to stress ourselves out. We're going to plan it all out, and then we're going to flop on the couch Sunday night, exhausted and over it, and we're not going to look at it again for 2 months. And we're going to expect that like that's going to produce food because we put a frenzied 2-day effort into it. Whereas really like gardening is something that takes a little bit of attention a lot. It's like you don't need to backyard blitz it. Sure, every now and then you might need to put a couple of hours in, especially, you know, change of seasons, springtime, all that. But really, once your garden's up and going, you go out, check it every morning, give it a bit of a water, see where some stuff's at, plant some stuff, half an hour a day. It doesn't take a lot of effort. But if you've never gardened before, I like to encourage people to start with the culinary herbs, just in pots. You know, just like get some good potting mix, go down to Bunnings, get a couple of, you know, terracotta pots or, you know, or just ones that people throw out in hard rubbish, and get some robust herbs like thyme, like rosemary, parsley, things like that, things that you're going to use in your cooking. Because
They cost a lot in the supermarket.
And
Exactly.
don't buy the fucking herbs that you've never eaten.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I did that in the past. Oh, what's that? That looks good. We've got to
pineapple
use that.
sage. Yeah. Oh, I'm going to use that on everything.
Yeah. And then you're like, it grows. It's
Yeah.
the only one that
And
takes
there it
off. And
is.
you're like, what is that? I can't
Yeah.
fucking remember.
Yeah. So start small with the culinary herbs, and then once you like have kept your robust herbs alive at the back door for like a couple of weeks, and you're feeling comfortable with that, I'd then go into like cut and come again greens, things like, you know, like little loose head salads, rocket, Mizuna, things that, you know, and again, like
Spinach,
most,
silver beet,
exactly, and like most seed retailers, like the Diggers Club, will sell like something as like a salad mix or a mesclun mix. So-
Kale's good until
Kale's
you have
good.
to eat it.
Yeah,
You're like,
yeah. It goes great in the winter garden. You're like, wow, look at all this kale I've got.
it looks
and then you're like,
beautiful.
oh,
I've been
look at all that kale I've got.
For the first time, I've been like blanching it before I kind of fry it up with
Yeah,
some
yeah.
butter and garlic.
Yeah.
And it's a completely different experience.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, why? Because I used to just fry it up and then you're like, it's kale.
Less of a jaw workout.
Yeah, now it's like, it's delicious.
Yeah. So yeah, just man, and those kind of things, like when you go and buy greens from the supermarket, they're just like, they're so crap. Like greens deteriorate so rapidly from harvest to consumption. But when you can grow them yourself, like you're only cutting what you need, like you just take a pair of scissors out. Like I plant like a kind of square meter of garden bed to just cut and come again greens every 2 weeks or so in our place. So it's just this like staggered thing. So as one's kind of getting cut down, the other one's getting ready, but then the other one will grow back after the first cut down. So we've always got, like, wherever I live, I try to have like a little salad bar set up. Because even if you're not growing anything else, it's so good to like get a good bit of meat from the butcher shop, chuck some spuds in the oven and go, what are we going to do for greens? I'll just duck out the back and cut a fresh salad. And it's like, it's peppery and crunchy and vibrant and alive. And it tastes amazing. Like, it's not suddenly like, oh, I've got to eat the salad. It's like, wow, this stuff is living and fantastic. And I actually enjoy it. So That would be my tips for first time gardeners, like as the most like bare bones, like start small, like don't do the backyard blitz thing. Don't turn your backyard into 100 square meters of like market garden, because that is like a real recipe for failure. Yeah. Like if you've never
Have
done
it close
before,
to the house too is always a good thing.
Totally.
Don't put it up at the back of the
And that's a
garden.
real permacultural principle, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah,
where it's
yeah.
like where your foot traffic goes, where your attention is, put it there, because like
Just wanna
if
see
it's
it
in the
every day.
right back corner and you go out the front door every day and you never go past it, like if it's sick, you're not going to know. Like you
it'll
just like,
disappear.
because plants, people are like, oh, I can't keep plants alive, but they give us some pretty significant clues when they're unhappy before they die. Like they start to wilt, they turn brown. Like you can bring it back from that. That's fine, but it's saying I'm thirsty, I need food. And the other thing would be to like, and I kind of touched on this a little bit before, would be to think about your soil. It's like concentrate on like enriching your soil as best as possible, because I know so many people kind of fail or stumble in their early forays as gardeners because they go and get the seedlings and they like peel back the grass on a patch of lawn and they just chuck them in there and they go, oh, they died, or they put it in like a pot with crappy potting mix and go, oh, the plant died, I don't have a green thumb, I kill stuff. It's like, well, no, you just set yourself up for failure because that soil is inert. There's no nutritional value to it for a plant. There's no structure to the soil. And really one of the best ways to get started with that, and I saw you guys got one downstairs, I didn't have a good look in it, is the worm farm.
Ooh,
Classic.
Gee's going to love to show you around
Yeah,
the worm farm.
doesn't take much operation.
See that? That's a
Yeah.
worm.
Yeah, that's 10,000 head of livestock down there, boys. And they eat your food scraps. They turn it into that thick black worm casting. They create the juice, which is like the ultimate kind of liquid feed for plants, and you're stopping stuff from going into landfill. So instead of putting all your veggie scraps in the bin, like chuck them to the worms, and in return they give you this like hyper nutritious soil conditioner. And if you're planting seedlings, like I love that you saw Jeff doing that as well, is like when you pull them out of the little punnet, get like a handful of that worm casting and like put it in that first. Put your seedling in that handful of worm casting, scrunch, gently squeeze it up like a little ball and plant that whole thing. So as that plant like starts to grow out of the shape that it was in the punnet, it's just got all this food around it. Like it's like, oh, actually I'm doing really good here. Because usually you put it in a punnet, you put it in some like poorly prepared soil with no life in it. It's like, oh, this is a desert. There's nothing here for me. And I'm like vulnerable and stressed already. And like, oh, I'm dead. So yeah, making sure.
The casting is the hard stuff that's like that's their waste.
Dry stuff.
So you've got the
Worm
liquid
poo.
and then it's just the
Yep.
dry. Yeah.
You got the wee and the poo, my kids call it.
Yeah.
Worm wee and worm poo.
Yep, and both of them like gold for the garden.
gold.
Yeah. And they, and it's like they're turning your scraps into that stuff. Like you don't have to go and use chemical fertilizers if you've got this kind of stuff. And if you've got more space, go to composting. It's
And a little skin on top of the soil is always good.
yeah.
Some mulch.
you told me that.
Protect it because soil
Stop it
soil
blowing
likes
away.
moisture.
Yeah.
It's
Protect the biome.
Yeah, exactly. So if you've, especially in the Australian summer, like if you think just like peeling your backyard veggie garden, having no protection for the soil, like that top 10 centimeters of soil is just going to be desiccated. It's going to be a wasteland. Like there'll be still life deeper down, but you could have life all the way up to the top of that soil level if it was protected from like those 40-degree, ultra UV days.
Yeah.
You, what did you do after River Cottage?
I did a lot of soul searching. I kind of like stood there like, wondering, questioning my like role in the world, because I'd very, for 4 years had very closely tied my like worth and focus on being a part of that. And so, yeah, I guess I went to this kind of like, mourning phase from that, where I was like, what am I going to do now? And my wife was really heavily pregnant with our second kid. And so we're down on the South Coast and we're like, well, what are we doing down here? Like, are we here because neither of us have family connections there? And so we're like, are we here just because we came here for a job, or are we here because we genuinely love it? And so right before the birth of our second kid, in that kind of crazy, stupid way that I never thought I'd do before my wife was actually pregnant, we moved in like the third trimester.
Yeah.
We did it for both of our kids. Like, I don't know why it happens. It just does. And
It happens a lot though.
it does, yeah.
If you
'Cause
want to be in the place you want to be when the baby
yeah,
comes.
totally. Because I saw people do it before we had our first kid. And I was
And
like,
you're like,
you
"That's
guys are crazy.
You add more
Like,
stress to
what?
your life."
I would never do that. And then it's like my wife's like third trimester of our first kid. She's like, I need to move. I need to leave this house. It's full of mold. It's like it doesn't get any sunlight. I'm like, okay, babe, we're going to do it. So we, we kind of went back to both of our kind of like family homes or areas, like the Hunter Valley for me, Melbourne for her. And, I thought, well, if we were to stay in Bermagui, which is where we were living, I could have just gone to dropping schnitzels at the local pub as like a chef, and done it and survived and made ends meet. But I thought, well, I probably got a little bit of a shot at this kind of media career maybe, but it's not going to come to me down here. So I thought I need to move to a more populous region, and that kind of worked out, And so I pursued it and managed to get some really good work with the ABC, which I'm still doing now.
And you're on the Catalyst, yeah?
I am.
Nice.
Whenever Catalyst does something with any sort of food angle,
Great.
I get called up for that, and I do Backroads for them as well, which is like it's the best job ever, really.
Two good gigs, yeah.
2 great gigs. Like it's
and they actually I know with the Catalyst anyway, it's got a real message that it sends that I think's an important one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's
what about the budget cuts to the ABC?
It's brutal. It's like, and unfortunately,
it's scary.
It is like
it's really scary.
Because really, like it's an organisation in decline, and it's dying a death of 1,000 cuts, and it's been such a cultural pillar in Australia because it gives voices to all groups, as part of its charter, groups that might not have any sort of commercial interest in making, or there might not be any commercial impetus to tell those stories, but they're just great stories. That's about,
and it's an accountability hub. Like it holds our government accountable, people that are doing
that's why they hate
accountable.
It. Yeah, that's why they're trying to massively defund it. So I think, as we live in a society with a less and less prominent ABC, I think Australia's kind of cultural, diversity and richness is in decline.
It'll suffer.
Yeah, it will suffer. Absolutely. Like
you can almost see it happening now.
Absolutely. And I mean, you look at that, as a response to some of those budget cuts, they've been doing all these like amazing retrospective programs where they look at some of the iconic programs that the ABC produced over the last 20, 30 years. And you go, wow, that show was a part of my childhood. And you look at it and you go, wow, they did some really like crazy and amazing things on that. And now that'll never be possible. Like even now, like things, like Recovery and things like that, which were like cool programs, and they did off the wall stuff that a commercial network would never touch. But that's a thing of the past now, and so like they're kind of like drawing in the boundaries and focusing on things like journalism and things like that because it's increasingly unsustainable and unfeasible for them to produce Australian content. So. I mean, for me, I've thrown my hat in with the ABC. So I'm like looking at the writing on the wall for that and kind of going, well, I can't rely on that as a career anymore. It's like a bit of cream. It's a bit of nice Tilba double gold cream when it comes. But, that might be for 4 to 6 weeks of the year that I get that income, right. So it's, I want to maintain some sort of flexibility so I can take that work when it arises. But yeah, we're going through like a little bit of a re-equalisation now. My wife and I, she's back in the workforce. She's working in a restaurant for the first time in 5 years since the birth of our 2 kids. And we're just kind of having the shifting of roles, which is like, you adapt.
Nice.
Like life throws stuff at you. You can either get bent out of shape by it, or you can kind of go, okay, well, this is the new playing field, and you can assess and move on, which is, a critical part for survival, I reckon.
Yeah.
Bro, we're going to wrap it up there. We've actually done a double episode.
I was about to say, it's all right.
We
half
hit
an hour or so here. Yeah. I'm like,
we've done 2 hours and 11 and a half minutes.
Yeah. Thanks,
decent
boys.
one.
Yeah, solid.
I'm warming up.
Yeah.
Man,
Scotch out.
Well, I mean, we'd love to have you back anytime.
Pleasure.
Come
Thank
back,
you.
train up a storm, and then come back on the show. I would really like to come and do the Rooster Kill next year. I think that'd be sick. So I guess
serious.
you can share some information with us about that when it's relevant.
Yeah.
is there any avenues where people can get in touch with you or that you'd like to send them to?
I guess my the best way to get in touch with me is through my Instagram account, which is _Paul_West_, which is what happens when you got a name like Paul West, which is like, I've never met John Smith, but I've actually met 7 other Paul Wests. So I think it's the true John Smith name. But yeah, that's and I mean, I'm not like hugely active on it, like as you guys probably saw if you had a bit of a peruse on my social media, but I'm lurking there in the background, and if you want to connect and see what's going on, I'd love, any JB listeners, if you're ever down the South Coast, Bermagui, God's country, then feel free to drop me a line and I'll point you in the direction of a few top spots.
Oh,
sick.
nice.
Yeah, man, we'll definitely do a road trip down there, and I'd love to come and put on a workshop or teach some jits or something.
Yeah. I think it'd be really well received down there. We kind of touched on that earlier. It's like, and that's one of the reasons why I want to be up here and establish a relationship with you guys here, because like I love what the JB is about. I think you guys are doing amazing work, and it really resonates with what I'm about.
Could be our next JB affiliate.
Yeah, the Deep South,
Let's
Deep
talk.
South JB.
We're talking career.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So, well, who knows? First conversation of many.
Yeah.
Unreal. Mate, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Pleasure,
Thank you.
boys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, T-Bone.
Thank you, Joe.